Let's see, Ms. Klicheva, will you please conduct the roll call?
Yes, thank you. Chair Hackman?
Present.
Vice Chair Rupervar?
Present.
Commissioner Alchek?
Present.
Commissioner Lawing?
Present.
Commissioner Suma?
Present.
Commissioner Templeton?
Present.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We are now, we'll move into oral communications. This section is for the public to speak on items not on the agenda. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak. On the Zoom app, there is a raise hand button on the bottom of your screen. If you're dialing in from a phone, remember to press *9 to let us know you want to speak. Ms. Klicheva, are there any public speakers for oral communication?
Yes, we have one raised hand, and let's bring up the timer.
Three minutes for your public comment. Good evening.
I see Aaron James. You can unmute yourself and share your public comments.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was able to learn a little bit about my mom's backdoor neighbor. You know, Teddy used to do a lot of walking out into the Baylands, and I've got a poem that I might share with you, Bart, at some point called Parker Pelican. But in any event, you'll find my name's Aaron James, and normally you'll find me at city council meetings. I'm a retired public defender, and I see the amazing number of lawyers here. I don't have that kind of law firm background. I spent my entire career as a public defender, line public defender, in fact, every day in the courtroom, cross-examining mostly cops and other folks. But I have to, and I spend a lot of time city council and HRC meetings, but I have to admit that I've spent very little time. I don't think I've ever talked at the Planning and Transportation. I sent you all some notes today and an article from the Rolling Stone on safe parking programs. And since we've got some really amazing folks, and I know that the liaisons, MIT, everybody is, you know, really extraordinarily great academics. I know one of the members went to Georgetown. I went to another school in Washington, D.C. for my first half. Starts with an H. But in any event, I wanted to talk to you about the safe parking program that's being proposed in Palo Alto. It's really an embarrassment. It wants to just use a couple of poor churches, you know, cash poor churches, to do what the city should be doing. And I'm wondering, with all these amazing land use folks and lawyers here, whether we could find an appropriate piece of property in Palo Alto where we could have a robust, safe parking program, a program where, you know, modeled after the program that I sent you the piece on the Santa Barbara safe parking program. And they have I visited there with Chuck Jagoda back in about 2011, 2012 when I was on Stop the Ban. I also sent you an article on a piece that I wrote back in about 2013 when Liz Ness and the city council wanted to ban people from living in their vehicles altogether. I'd like to take some funds from the police department, not a lot, but, you know, they have an extraordinarily bloated fund, and also from the proposed jail, I should say new police station, and see if we could use those funds instead of trying to ask churches to do the impossible. We, back in 2012, 2013, reached out to 41 faith communities. There was very, very little interest. People are very fearful of having folks living in RVs in Palo Alto, but we really need to do that as a social statement that Palo Alto takes care of its own. Okay, I hope to talk with you later on some of the agendized items, but it's a great pleasure to be dealing with folks with so much background and so much experience. Really an honor. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other?
Sorry for interrupting. Yes, we have one more raised hand. It's Rebecca Eisenberg.
Eisenberg, you have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Chair Heckman. I am grateful to be here. First, I want to thank my good friend, Aaron James, who is always a voice for the community. and he speaks so loudly on behalf of public interest. So I want to remind you that you're also supposed to be a voice for the community, and you're also supposed to speak on behalf of public interest. So I'm sure that you'll do that this year. You know, as Aaron pointed out, there are lots of different kinds of lawyers who practice in property, real estate related law. There are lawyers who represent tenants. There are lawyers who represent buyers. There are lawyers who represent, well, buyers of small property. There are lawyers who represent small businesses, again, mostly tenants. There are lawyers who represent cities when they do their job and actually prevent harmful developments to take place in a city. Developments that cause pollution, cause dangerous traffic, you know, that, for example, put a commercial operation in the middle of a residential neighborhood, who interpret laws the ways that they're supposed to be interpreted, you know, on behalf of the public interest. Lots and lots of lawyers, including me and my husband, who have all practiced a lot in the field of real estate and property. All three of you on this commission represent a very tiny yet most lucrative slice of real property law practice, as I'm sure you know, which is representing commercial developers, and especially representing commercial developers in their disputes with cities like Palo Alto. Now, it wouldn't have been my first choice to have three of you, half of the commission, represent, and the chair and the vice chair actually have legal duties on behalf of clients who are on the other side of the table. Maybe one of you would be fair. But given that you're in this situation, I think it's more than fair for you all to take the possibly not mandatory, but still, if you ask me, morally required stand of disclosing any or all conflicts of interest, including even interests that create a perceived conflict of interest, such as the fact that one of you, its family is a huge donor to Castellea and is, from what people say, hoping that Castellea will grant admission to your own daughters. And that one of you actually shares a lawyer with Castellea's lawyers, which maybe creates the perception that you might be partly paying for Castellea's legal fees. Why not just get everything out in the open and just let the public know so you can reassure us there are no conflicts? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any additional oral communications?
I don't think that was
Oh. No, we don't have any raised hands. That concludes oral communications.
Thank you very much. So we will move now to agenda changes, additions and deletions. And I do have a agenda change tonight that I'd like to propose to the commission. Tonight we have two study sessions. Agenda item 2 is the South Palo Alto Bikeways project study session. Item 3 is the PATMA study session, and I would like to flip those two agenda items. Any comments from any of the commissioners? Let's see. Commissioner Suma, I saw you raise your hand.
Oh, thank you so much. So I'm concerned that the item regarding the verbs, if I can use the acronym, Grant Project for Bikeways and Community Engagement Plan, was considered 2 nights ago in an action item by the City Council, and that both of our suggested recommendations from staff, 1 and 2, were covered in an action item by the City Council, in addition to other considerations they had, which were, I think, more budgetary, which isn't really in our purview, and that it isn't necessary at this time for us to discuss this until on council action, staff comes back with some specific options for both the, for number 2, which is the plan to engage community, and also the plans to, the actual plans, options for the improvement to bicycle paths. So I was just very confused by the timing and why it was on our, why it was before us tonight, when it seems kind of backwards, like, because we don't have the ability to recommend something to council that they have already taken an action on. So I was wondering if it might be a better use of everyone's time to only take public comment, since this was agendized, open the public hearing, take public comment and close it, and then not discuss it amongst ourselves until there was further action by staff for us to respond to.
All right. Let me hold that thought for a moment and again find out if there are any other commission comments on flipping these 2 agenda items, and then I'll come back to this point Commissioner Suma has made. Any other? I'm not seeing any other commissioners raise their hand.
I'm
Sorry, I'm
Hi.
not.
I'm just raising this hand.
Oh, okay, good. Still learning the system.
Did you want to share your rationale for the proposed change, just for the benefit of the public?
Sure. One of our commissioners won't be able to participate in item 2. So I was hoping to move item 3 up so that commissioner could participate in
And sign off. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I can support that.
So I'm not seeing any objection to that. Mr. Yang, is it the discretion of the chair to reorder the agenda, or do I need a vote?
Yes, that's within the chair's discretion, so there's no motion required.
So be it. And then Commissioner Suma, what I would ask is if when we get to the Bikeways project agenda item, let's have that, the issue you raised, let's discuss that up front and get some staff input on why they might want to go forward with commission communication or not, based on action the council took two nights ago. Would that be acceptable?
That sounds reasonable, but I'm wondering if you could shed more light on the who will not be available later. I just, if you could be more specific.
Jarvis, go ahead, Chair Hoffman.
I'll recognize the vice chair.
I can't participate. Yeah, I can't participate. I live within 500 feet of the project. So I'm going to have to recuse myself. Yeah. And not discuss the topic.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. So we'll, after city official reports, which we're about to do, then we'll move to our study sessions, and we'll start with the what is agenda item number 3. And once that's concluded, we'll go to what is listed as agenda item 2 on the agenda. So let's move now into city official reports. Ms. Tanner, do you have a report for us?
Yes, first maybe we'll do just a little bit of business. We kind of began this last time thinking about our calendar together for the upcoming year. So you'll notice on the calendar there are 3 dates noted with notations in the rightmost column. So one of them is the August 11th, which is the PAUSD start week. So that's when school begins for the next school year. Hopefully it will be in person. So perhaps even more momentous than a normal school year. We have the day before Thanksgiving, and then the 29th of December, which is the week of New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And so we would want to see if the commission would be interested in proposing those for cancellation. In addition, I did speak with Chair Heckman and possibly proposing July 28th and August 11th for cancellation. That would give a little bit of a summer break to the commission, and so a time to hopefully lighten up in the year. Perhaps we can even be planning real vacations, who knows, but a time to know that we will not have meetings if there is need to plan for travel or for other time off, even if it's a staycation. So we can come back to that if we want, or I'm interested if commissioners have comments about having those 3 and possibly 4 days canceled in the calendar for 2021. Is anyone opposed to it? I see
Mr. Lowry, I see
Templeton
your
has a
hand.
hand.
Did you recognize me?
I did.
Okay,
And then
sorry.
Commissioner Suma.
It just feels a little bit early to do that, is my first automatic response, in the context of, we've had a couple of lean years where we didn't get a lot of agenda items and we've had a lot of cancellations. If that were to happen again early in the year, then then we'd already have other plans booked for those other 3 weeks. So it seems a little premature is my first reaction.
Is that for the July date? I'm assuming, I guess I'm making an assumption that the New Year's Eve week and the day before Thanksgiving would be canceled, but unless there's strong opposition to that, we've just traditionally.
Yes, Ms. Tanner, my comments were focused more on 7/28 and 8/11. I don't actually know at this point if there's how many of the commissioners the start week for school is an issue. It could be 1 or 2 or 3, I don't know, but.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Commissioner Suma, then Commissioner Alchek.
Thank you so much. I don't see the need, and I don't for a summer break for the Planning Commission. We have not typically had that because we don't meet every week. I mean, we meet twice a month typically. So I don't see the need, and I agree with Commissioner Lowen, it's a bit premature. I also think the start of school, I don't know. I mean, seems like I really appreciate what important time that is for parents of young children or children in school, but it seems a bit arbitrary to me. So I would say that we should meet throughout the year to do the job of the commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Suma. If I could ask if your comments also apply to the meeting scheduled the day before Thanksgiving and the meeting New Year's Eve week, or you're really focusing on just the summer?
Oh, thank you for asking. Day before Thanksgiving, I'm kind of iffy on, and I don't feel as strongly about that. But I think that the summer holiday concept is not one that has been a tradition in the Planning Commission. I think we work throughout the year because we don't meet every week, and I feel more strongly about that.
New Year's Eve, the December 29th?
I sort of feel the same about it's. It doesn't seem necessary for me, but if people felt strongly about it, I actually spoke to the ones that I felt more strongly about. So thank you for asking.
Mr. Alchek. Unmute, please.
Thank you. Okay, I'll do my sort of big picture perspective on this. Is that I have always sort of suggested that I don't, hold on one second.
like school-age children.
I know, it's crazy. I don't know where they came from. They just invaded my home. Okay, let me try that again. Big picture. I have always sort of suggested, I think, that we don't need a full house to sort of do the work of the city. And in the past, we've had efforts to ask, oh, will everyone be at this meeting? It's an important meeting. And I sometimes think that it sort of gives the wrong impression to the community that we're here to show up when we can. There are always going to be instances where commissioners can't make a certain meeting. And I think that we shouldn't assume a meeting will get canceled unless, for example, staff receives multiple cancellations and then goes, oh, we're worried about having a quorum. And so that's just my philosophy. I don't think we should be afraid to have meetings with 4 people if the city's if our bylaws say 4 people is enough for us to do the business of the city. Okay, and then I would suggest to you that we should absolutely cancel the meetings between Christmas and New Year's. We should cancel the meeting before Thanksgiving. This is not just because that would be convenient to us. The vast majority of the people that we are hosting these meetings for, both applicants and residents, are not going to find a meeting in that time frame convenient to provide their public testimony, if you will, right? And what is awful is when we feel that phone never rings. What is awful is, hold on a second. What is awful is when we feel like we haven't had a chance to collect public testimony or the public wasn't given enough of an opportunity to respond, right? And so we'd be setting ourselves up for that criticism if we hosted a meeting during a period of time when nearly every corporate office is on break. And then I would add one more thing, which is that I don't have strong feelings about a summer break. I would suggest to you that, and I have said this in the past too, if the city manager is running his planning department in such a way that they are lean during one of the summer months, which is to say that if applications were received, maybe the planning department hasn't had a chance to properly vet them or prepare them, then I don't see why we would schedule meetings during that period of time if we knew that we were sort of lean and couldn't. So if it's the intention of the city's head to operate lean during that month as some sort of HR policy for the planning department, then I think we should respect that. And so I would just sort of throw it back to the assistant director here, Tanner, and suggest that if her office is working light during one of the summer months, then I don't see why they would have to remote in just for us. And then I would say one more thing, which is that I think that we would earn a lot of praise from our community if we figured out a way to get ahead of the game when it comes to the publication of our weekly reports, which is to say that in a perfect world, I imagine like we have a meeting scheduled right now for February 10th. What if we told we didn't tell ourselves, but we told everyone else that meeting actually wasn't going to take place on February 10th, that we were going to push it a week, right? And then we prepared like it was going to be on February 10th. And then we got the packet a week and a half before the meeting, as opposed to 2 days before the meeting. What I guess what I'm trying to say is I would love it if we somehow got on this schedule. We were ready for meetings like 2 weeks out as opposed to 72 hours out. And I wonder if, is that all just pushing every meeting like 2 weeks? I don't know if that just means like pushing everything out like 1.5 weeks or 2 weeks. And so that we're basically ahead of schedule. But I feel like we got that criticism a lot towards the end of last year, which was just that people felt like they didn't have enough time for these very thick packets. And I sometimes feel like, even though I can make the time, it seems rushed. So to the extent that that's an option, if we have space in the schedule, we sort of don't give it to ourselves, but we do push it anyways. And then we accomplish 2 goals at the same time. You give yourself a break, but we're also ahead of schedule. Sorry, last comment.
So Chair Templeton, I see your, Commissioner Templeton, I see your hand is up, old habits. But Ms. Tanner, do you want to talk about the timing of staff reports now, or do you want to hold it until we finish this discussion of which meetings we might take off the table, and then we'll cover it during the remainder of your report?
Certainly, we can conclude this section. I mean, I could say briefly, it's not a matter of pushing things back. It's a matter of when we're requiring staff to have reports finished and project sponsors and other items to be submitted. So it isn't about pushing the meeting date back. I don't know if that was the suggestion. It's a matter of the publication deadlines and then the staff deadlines for finishing items and preparing them for publication. So I don't know if that answers the question, but.
I understood Commissioner Olczak, although he's speaking euphemistically about imagining the dates were pushed out, he's really talking about earlier publication of the material, so there's more time to work with it before the actual meeting.
It would be a challenge. It's not impossible, but it would be a challenge.
All right. Well, just to transition us back, I would agree with Commissioner Olczak that it's also a challenge to prepare with a short amount of turnaround time between when the packet is received. Mine didn't come until Monday this week. So, you know, in this case, it's okay. But in some cases, that's too short. Back to the schedule, you know, I think that somehow maybe some context was lost about the week that school starts. That is just a particularly challenging week for those of us with kids in the school system. It doesn't necessarily mean that we want to take that time off. And so, you know, those of you who were implying that that was the request, you know, if commissioners can't make it that week, they can let people know they can't make it that week. But I think it was important to let staff know that that week is particularly challenging, and it's expected to be more challenging this year than any other in the history of the nation. So heads up. So I think it's fine to have it as an annotation, and especially as you're thinking about what items to agendize, please just keep that in mind that attentions may be split that week. Regarding the summer break, I always appreciate it if we do have a light week, if we can combine that week with another week, and that's especially true in the summer. You know, that's again up to staff and how they want to agendize things, but it's always appreciated that we're really efficient with the use of our times, and especially our on-call times. Of course, all of us are ready and available to meet when we need to meet. I think that the holiday times that were suggested as cancellations are fine with me. And just to let the other commissioners know, just like we did this year, if we find ourselves in an especially heavy load time, you know, there's always the possibility that we can agendize an additional meeting during adjacent weeks so that it doesn't interfere with the holiday and we can still get the business of the city done. So I think all of that is to say, let's definitely cancel Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve weeks and be on the lookout for other potential changes that may come as we develop the agenda.
Thank you. Vice Chair Rupavar, do you want to share some thoughts, or you may have? Well, let me share mine, and we'll wait for Vice Chair Rupavar to come back on. I'm supportive of eliminating the two holiday proximate meeting dates. We did that this year, and I am open, I would say, to taking the meeting of the August 11th off, and if it's the will of the commission to take the July 28th off for the reasons that Ms. Tanner explained. But it feels like subject to Vice Chair Rupivar's comments that maybe on those two we're not. I'm not hearing consensus so far that we should take that action now, although we may look at it later in the year. So let me have you chime in, Vice Chair Rupivar, and then I want to talk for just a second on the timing of staff reports.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I think we should take the November and January, the holiday breaks off. I think that's what most people agree on. And I would agree with respect to the August date, given, you know, people have childcare and there's going to be less engagement with the public. And then I'd be open to taking July off too, Commissioner Hockman, if the commission so chooses and feels that's the right direction.
All right.
So
Thank
similar
you.
to what you said, basically, I basically agree with what you said.
All right. So my sense of the will of this group is that we're comfortable eliminating the November 24th and December 29th at this time, but really not ready to take action on the summer schedule. So to do that, Mr. Yang, is that just a will of the group, or do you need a motion?
I think this is actually an area where Assistant Director Tanner, as the secretary for the commission, you know, works on the schedule for the year. And so she's just soliciting feedback from the commission, and we'll take it from there.
All right. So then, Ms. Tanner, do you have adequate direction on this?
Yes, I do, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So just before, I did want to just very briefly touch on the desire that Commissioner Alchek mentioned with just a couple of points. I do I work in a number of jurisdictions, and it's pretty typical that the squeeze, as Commissioner Alchek might call it, that we find ourselves in with staff material coming shortly before the meeting. It's a pretty typical time frame, a Friday delivery for a Wednesday meeting, sometimes a Thursday meeting, or a Thursday delivery for a Tuesday meeting in those jurisdictions that are having their meetings on Tuesday. One thing I have noticed when I started on the commission last January, we would receive our packets on Friday, as we do now electronically, but also our packets were typically hand delivered on Friday. That action was curtailed with the pandemic for reasons of staff safety, I think. And so now our packets do arrive somewhat later. But I think it's clear to me that you know, a number of the commissioners value the hard copy, and that it's a more workable document. And so while it won't get us all the way to what Commissioner Alchek is thinking of, I'm wondering if staff can look at whether there's a feasible way of getting those packets before the weekend, the hard copies delivered.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. I think part of the challenge has been with City Hall closed, our courier service getting access to the mail room and the print shop that's physically in the building. And so we can maybe revisit the protocols that would allow that, and the timing of, you know, perhaps our print shop being able to provide that access for the courier service. And we, as you know, probably know, we've been using the mail. And so that's part of the timing delay.
And I'm not dissuading you from investigating whether you may be able to push the typical date sooner than the Friday before the meeting to help out with Commissioner Alchek's concern.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
And
More?
I do have just a few quick updates. I do promise to be quick. I know we're a little behind schedule. One is just what you probably all already know, which is that we are now in the purple tier as a county on the state's color-coded 4-tier system. You may remember that there are 4 colors: purple, red, orange, and yellow. Purple is the most widespread of the virus is widely spread in the community. So it's still not a great place to be compared to where we were before. I mean, the summer we were heading towards yellow. And so some new services and activities are now allowed. Outdoor dining, you can get your hair cut. There's some more allowances for certain types of gatherings, certain sports and things like that. So it's definitely, hopefully, that we're moving in the right direction with our ICU beds and things like that. And certainly welcome news for some of our restaurateurs and other local businesses that they can have increased capacity, or, really for hair salons and things that they can operate at all, as they were not able to operate in their facilities for the past almost 2 months. So that's certainly good news. We do have the City Council will be having a retreat on Saturday, January 30th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. It remains a remote and virtual meeting. So if you're interested in participating in that retreat, the agenda is online and the information for participating. Again, that's this coming Saturday, which is already the 30th of January. And then for the Regional Housing Needs Assessment or Allocation process, the RHNA process, this month, ABAG board voted on the methodology by which they would allocate housing units to jurisdictions within the Bay Area region. And so we have, as Palo Alto, received an allocation of about 6,000 units. You may recall earlier reports that we had about 10,000 units allocated to the city of Palo Alto. And as a result of the integration of updated blueprint, which the blueprint is the 2050 long range plan for the Bay Area, the integration of that data, as well as some changes in the strategies that looked more towards putting housing units and jobs in areas that are closer to transit, like some of our major cities, San Francisco, Oakland. Those cities had an increased allocation, and cities like Palo Alto and others have a reduced allocation. So we went from about 10,000 to about 6,000 units. How that will next come to you all will be through our housing element process, which is going to be a topic that City Council will discuss next week to help us figure out how we're going to get together a community input process for the housing element, what that will look like, and how we can begin in earnest working on our 2023 housing element. So those are my updates. Sylvia, Ms. Starlight, did you have an update you wanted to give? I saw you come on screen, but maybe we were just getting ready for the next item.
Just getting ready for the next
item. All right, sorry about that. So that's my report, and thank you so much, commissioners.
Thank you. I see two commissioners' hands, Commissioner Suma and Commissioner Lowing. Are you wanting to speak to the report here? Commissioner Suma, let's start with you.
Thank you so much. Just very briefly, with regards to Commissioner Alczyk's concern about the date of release of packets, I do think, and I could be wrong about this, and I know that staff is still working on finalizing the new BCC handbook, but I do think that there is a standard in there for board and commission. I could be wrong, and Rachel Tanner will correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think there is a standard that is consistent with the council release, which is supposed to be 10 days, I think, before, which is different than the state law. But I'm not sure, but I think there is some clarification in the new BCC handbook about release times for boards and commissions. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
You. And certainly one of the things we are working on, and Nguyen is helping us, is a process to get our procedures in line with that, but we do need a little bit of time to do that. And then also the handbook is supposed to be coming back to the council as ordinance changes. So we want to start moving in that direction. I also do want to see the ink dry on the ordinance changes before we move too far, because you never know, things could be tweaked, especially if we have some council members. So we are preparing for that. And we'll be bringing that before you as well as an item to discuss some of those changes.
Commissioner Lowing.
Yes, two quick things. I want to underscore that it's not just the attorneys here that want the paper. I think most of us want that paper because it's just more convenient to work that way and then have it in front of us when we're chatting. Secondly, while it's not probably always possible to get it earlier than how it's coming, I'll raise a point that I've mentioned many times in the last 4 years, which is on some significant items that are going to be not only controversial, but take a lot of time to prep for. We just can't have those on an action calendar with only one meeting. It's a disservice to us because we can't prepare adequately to give our best judgment. And it's a disservice to the public who don't benefit from our best judgment and also kind of get that all sprung on them, and then it's an action item that night. So I would really ask again with a double underscore that on these more complex issues, we just have to have time to do it. And if you can't get to it, I'm not making any comment on that, but then we should have to extend it to a second meeting or maybe even boot it. So you can make that call maybe in conjunction with the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Tanner, you've concluded your director's report. All right, then we're gonna move now on to agenda item 3, which is a study session with the Palo Alto Transportation Management Association, PATMA, regarding the organization's efforts to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips, reducing congestion and demand for parking, and improving the quality of life in Palo Alto by mitigating transportation-related emissions and adaptations during COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you very much, Chair Heckman. We have our Office of Transportation. This is turning kind of into a transportation evening in some ways. And so we have Ms. Sylvia Starlack, who will be introducing our guest who will be with us. We also have Philip Cami, who is our Chief Transportation Official with us as well. So Sylvia, take it away.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight, the 2 remaining topics on the agenda both relate to a major focus of the Office of Transportation, and that is improving quality of life via reducing traffic congestion. The first is the Palo Alto Transportation Management Association, and the second one is the Safe Routes to School, or VERBS project. Both of tonight's items fall into the category of transportation demand management, which is a fancy term for reducing single occupancy vehicle use and increasing the efficiency of our roadways by diversifying the types of transportation available. You may hear us use the term SOV, which stands for single occupancy vehicle, that carries a driver only. So just in case we transportation folks start talking in this lingo, I'm sure you've heard it before. You know what it is. The first item, the Palo Alto Tma, is a nonprofit funded by the city that works to help commuters into Palo Alto to leave their cars at home. By providing transit passes and carpool subsidies, the TMA reduces congestion, reduces demand for parking in our garages and on our neighborhood streets, and improves air quality. The TMA board consists of businesses located in downtown and California Avenue, and the city is also a member of the TMA's board of directors. The second item tonight is the South Palo Alto Bikeways project, and that's a grant-funded project to improve safety and accessibility on 3 school bike routes so that more families will choose biking for the school commute. It turns out that reducing the number of cars arriving at a school improves safety for everyone commuting to that school. A bonus of this particular project is that it has key bike network connections that will benefit all users of those facilities. So I just wanted to frame tonight's items in the transportation demand management world for you. These are our 2 most successful and really kind of unique in the world, or maybe not the world, but unique in the nation, very successful programs, each in their own way, the Safe Routes program and the TMA. So now I'd like to introduce Steve Rainey and Kruti Ladani from the TMA, and they will take it from here.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Heckman and Vice Chair Ruperbar, commissioners and city staff. I'm Steve Rainey, and presenting with me tonight will be Kruti Ladani as well. And we are the staffers for the TMA. And then the board is representing Weston, Premier Properties, Amazon, and City of Palo Alto. I also want to acknowledge some of our Hall of Fame board members from the past, including restaurateurs Rob George and Zareen Khan, the city's Michelle Flaherty, Palantir's Bob McGrew, and Google's Lucy Noble. So the objective tonight is just to orient you to the TMA, who we are, what we do. So we'll cover the history and the mission, our Transit Pass program, which is unique in the US, our metrics, which are actually pretty unique, and we'll explain how the metrics have gone down due to COVID. Talk about our unique in the nation Bike Love Commute Incentive Project, and talk about collaborating with the 2 new Marriotts on TDM, talk about our unique Commute Survey, and then give a look to the future. So, as you know, pre-COVID, traffic was the #1 or #2 issue in all the peninsula cities. As part of a response to that, Council catalyzed the formation of the TMA with a colleagues memo in 2013, leading to a TMA study, and the TMA was in operation by 2016. The first program was a scoop carpool subsidy, and then it was followed by the transit program. And the TMA has nonprofit status and began as fiscally sponsored by the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, and then achieved 501c3 status in 2019. And my and Crudy's company, Alltrans, started providing staffing services in 2018, and the board wanted us to grow by 5 quite rapidly. And that was the big push. So as previously stated, our mission is to reduce traffic and demand for parking by improving in commuting, contributing to quality of life, economic vitality, and environmental goals. And we serve both downtown and CalLab, and CalLab was just a recent council decision this year. And our funding primarily comes from City of Palo Alto, and primarily that comes from the University Avenue Parking Fund. In the previous fiscal year, that was $750,000, and because of COVID, that got reduced to $750,000. In this fiscal year, we also collect revenue from grants and employers. And with that, I want to pass it to Crudy to talk about the Transit Pass program.
Thanks, Steve. Well, our commuters are low-income workers that work in restaurants, hotels, healthcare, finance, and retail in the downtown as well as California Avenue area. Some of these jobs are ideal for Spanish speakers, and we communicate in Espanol where it is preferred. In such jobs, we've seen that staff turns over twice per year, but our program has significantly improved employee retention over the years. Pre-COVID, the TMA administered 271 passes, with more passes for Caltrain than the other buses, indicating the in-commuters from Northern Peninsula and South Bay were more frequent than the neighboring cities. We were spending $31,000 per month serving 66 businesses through a unique door-to-door outreach method. Next slide, please. By way of a remarkable and nationally significant program, we're changing lives and businesses here. We help employers attract and retain talent while alleviating the cost burden and making it feasible for employees to work in an expensive area. You might have seen these testimonials in the city council presentations as well. Next slide, please. So what does a typical service worker commuter profile look like? Service worker usually works low-wage jobs, often 2 jobs at a time, with varying hours, so that makes commuting very challenging. The tech workers, on the other hand, get massages and sleep pods at their workplace. The low workers often SOV or drive alone just to have a place to nap. The gentrification of local housing to South Bay or East Bay further increases the commute challenges by increasing the distance. Some workers move their cars every 2 hours with And because of their month-to-month job perspective, they avoid purchasing the 6-month low-income parking permit. In contrast, some workers receive housing subsidies to live closer to work. SOV tech commuting in Palo Alto is as low as anywhere else. Next slide, please. So how does the program work from the PATMA? PATMA distributes Clipper cards and electronically adds monthly passes to these cards via the unique backend on consumer software clippercard.com website. It's amazing that that this software works because it's really old, but it's not 100% reliable. For instance, the Caltrain users are expected to tag when they get on the train, ride the train, and then tag another reader when they get off. Forgetting the second tag can often result in a negative balance and a $75 citation fee that the service workers can't really pay for. In contrast, BART's fare gates avoid this problem, and so we'll look forward to the Clipper 2.0 upgrade. The current system requires an extra level of customer support and administration work that presents challenges of scale. We've documented some of these complexities in a national FTA report, which is linked here on the slide. And with that, back to you, Steve.
Thanks, Kruti. Late breaking news. We have the potential for very exciting cost savings from Caltrain, and it's worth actually reading Caltrain's equity statement from their equity report. They want to prioritize the needs of transit-dependent riders, enhance equity in the system, make the system more relevant to lower income people and members of racial groups who have historically been marginalized and overlooked in planning processes. So what they're proposing to do, what they've adopted, is to have employers donate Go passes to nonprofits such as PATMA, which would potentially eliminate our $31,000 per month Caltrain cost. So the details and timing are to be determined. Just got adopted last week, but it's very exciting. Okay, so that's the Transit Pass program. And now let's talk about our metrics. So if you're skeptical about TDM efficacy, well, so is Councilmember Phil Seth, who said, don't tell me about effort-based TDM, the list of things that you do. That's a little too touchy-feely. I want performance-based outcome metrics. And so one of our key metrics is the number of cars we've removed. And this is a look at 2020. And in February, we removed 387 cars. The blue is Caltrain, blue is the Transit Pass program, and green is our Waze carpool program. And you can see that once we had shelter in place, then things dropped way off and then began to pick up as we began to hit orange level in the fall, and then dropped a little bit again when we hit purple in December. So that's our cars removed metric key performance indicator. Now, next we're on to our innovative new Bike Love Commute Incentive Project. So we're going to provide daily incentives for verifiable first mile to transit trips and direct to work commutes, and up to $600 per year per commuter. And very innovative project. And we're going to geofence with location tracking to confirm those active mode trips, including putting geofences around Caltrain stations. And this is all sort of smartphone driven. Incentive dollars can be redeemed with your Apple or Google wallet to local merchants. So we're going to geofence how you can get authorized to use the money. So we're going to pour that money back into the Palo Alto economy. So there's a multiplier effect from that. And this is a $346,000 project where we've won $100,000 in federal funding. And it's important that that council is pushing us to graduate or to generate more revenue from external sources and reduce the hit on the University Avenue parking fund. And in our particular grant proposal, 2 grants were awarded out of 40 proposals, and we were ranked #1. So we had a uniquely well-received concept. And unlike a typical TMA, we're in the software product management business, team with our software developer. It's an exciting project. And regionally, MTC is forecasting that for the upcoming mode shift, the biggest gain is going to be to bicycling. And this project is nationally prominent because we've got the Federal Transportation Research Board, American Public Transit Association, Los Angeles Metro Transit's Office of Extraordinary Innovation, MTC's New Mobility Group. It's important that we have the bike storage vendors that have the bike storage at Caltrain stations. If you think holistically of the challenges that we have to do to get people to bike to Caltrain and park, Silicon Valley Leadership Group and Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition. So that's our bike love concept. And another activity we have is collaborating with the 2 new Marriotts at 744 San Antonio on their TDM plan. So there's 30 required items in the TDM elements of the entitlement. And one of those items says you've got to join the TMA. And so that's caused our collaboration. And if you think about our programs such as Waze Carpool, we have a nice way to account for trips that go to those hotels by geofencing. And we've got the scale of having a citywide Waze Carpool program, the economies of scale for applying that to those hotels. Interestingly, there is a requirement to have a shuttle to get people for meetings at Google as well as to Caltrain. And there's a potential 2-city, 2-TMA sub-regional collaboration between PATMA and MVGO that already offer a shuttle that flies San Antonio. So we may be able to add a stop at the hotels. And those hotels are about 3 parcels away from Mike's Bikes. And there's going to be Mike's Bikes is going to help with a bike program there. And now we're on to another activity we do, which is our Commute Survey. And like SRP Go, we have an outreach focused Commute Survey to drive adoption of our program. So the idea being you take the survey and we motivate you to start using Waze Carpool the next day, or we inform you about our Transit Pass program and get you to apply for it. So we were able to lower the cost of our Commute Survey by bringing it in-house. And by this very painstaking walking down University Avenue door to door, going in and picking up business cards and so forth, we tripled the number of responses, and we provided some interesting information for the business registry. And we were able to increase our program adoption by 30%. So it really worked to reach out our tentacles into the 800 businesses, mostly tiny in downtown. Now, this is a look at some of the charts from our Commute Survey. So we have 4 economic sectors: government, light office, service workers, and technology. And they have different commute mode share. So if you look at government, that's City Palo Alto, then the bars 4, 5, and 6 on the left show a reduction in SOV, single occupancy vehicle, commuting over 3 years down to 42%. Then we've got light office. Then we've got the service workers who have that higher baseline SOV mode share, about 70%. And then again, our tech workers literally have the lowest SOV in the nation. But one thing you'll find is when you increase the number of respondents, then there's a phenomenon where that tends to increase your SOV. But SOV in 2019 was 37% from the tech worker respondents. That is our Commute Survey. Then the other key metric we have looks at cost efficacy, the cost per year of 1 car reduced or 1 SOV commute reduced. So in row 1, there are super cost-effective ways to do it, where the Gates Foundation in Seattle charges people $12 a day if they commute via SOV. So they actually make money from their program. And then our programs are 4, 6, 7, and 8 in blue. So our Bike Love program has the potential to reduce our cost per year for SOV reduced. And then our other 3 programs will run around $1,600 per year per SOV reduced. And then also sort of comparing with some other sorts of TDM efforts, SRP Go gave their cost per commuter at roughly $5,000 per year for running private express motor coaches. So finishing up and looking into the future, thinking about the world post-vaccine, returning to work, economic recovery, a key role in the TMA is helping to accelerate the rehiring of service workers, providing restaurants and retail with a competitive advantage over other cities by having a subsidized commute. So we think of ourselves as part of the Uplift local effort to re-energize the economy. And the other thing that's interesting is all those folks that are working from home, when some of them return, there's this psychological fresh start where we can build a new and greener commute habit. And also looking into the future, we're discussing collaborations with other cities, and we changed our bylaws to allow collaboration sub-regionally. And East Palo Alto and Menlo Park have TMA studies underway, so they may form TMAs that we can help with. And we aspire to come back later to the commission this year to talk about the progress on our Bike Love project. And of course, we're always open to meet and brainstorm with commissioners and with residents. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rainey and Ms. Ladani, for that informative report. I'd like to find out from the commissioners if any of you have questions that you feel need to be asked before we take public comment. If so, please raise your hand. Commissioner Lyon, I see your hand up. I'm thinking that's a carryover from before. All right. So I'm not seeing any commissioner hands up. So this is not a this is a study session item. It's not a public hearing, but we do invite public comment. And so now I'm going to open the floor for public comments. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak to this item. On the Zoom app, there is a raise hand button on the bottom of your screen. If you are dialing in from a phone, remember to press *9. Ms. Klicheva, are there any public speakers for this item number 3?
Yes, we have 3 raised hands at the moment. And our first speaker is Aaron James. Aaron James, you can speak now.
Okay, so this seems inextricably linked with a safe parking program. The folks that are living in their RVs and their vehicles are being told to move every 72 hours. They're really environmentally inappropriate. And I see that we've got, maybe I'm going to push Ms. Tanner to move beyond the next time she presents on the safe parking programs, just the poor, cash poor strapped churches. And maybe we get Google, do a grant writing to Google and Facebook so that they, as well as city government, kind of can support a very strong, robust parking program where these vehicles don't have to drive. They're emitting all sorts of bad toxics, and they're permitted to be here under the Constitution. I'll remind you of the 9th Circuit decision in Desert Rain that, you know, when Liz Niss was trying to prevent people from living in the vehicles altogether, that decision came down and, you know, quashed her mean-spiritedness. But I don't think you are mean folks here. I think you want to also consider the most vulnerable here in this transportation equation. Also, if we could get our police from running around all the time in their police vehicles, get them out of those vehicles, unless there's really a need for it, and emerging, get them walking the beat, getting to know the community. When's the last time you had somebody over here in the the Duveneck neighborhood, for example, walk in the beat. When do you ever see our cops? Unless they're driving real fast by, polluting the sky, et cetera, et cetera. So part of the defunding notion isn't that we don't like some police officers, okay? There's some good ones out there.
Mr. James, can I interrupt you for just a moment?
I'd like my time back, and
I'd like to stop the clock, please.
thank you very much.
Yeah. The reason I interrupted you is that
Glad you,
your clock is stopped while your comments are of interest. They don't seem to be on the topic of the presentation that we just had, which is the agenda item, which is the sole focus of comments that we're taking right now. So that's this effort by PATMA to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips, congestion, and demand for parking. So if you have comments on this topic, then I invite, we'll turn the clock back on, and you can make them. If your comments are on the item that you have been discussing, then again, we value those comments. This is just not the right place for them. Public comment is the right place, and of course, emails. This commission is very good about reading those. So I will ask you if you do have comments on this particular agenda item. If so, then we'll hear them out for the next minute and 25 seconds. Mr. James? Are you still there?
I think we may need to unmute Mr. James for him
Yeah.
to be able to speak. Oh, there we go. Okay.
We have a disagreement, Mr. Chair. I believe the comments I made are exactly on point. We're talking about transportation issues that spoil the environment of the city of Palo Alto. And I'm talking about the safe parking program that needs to get cars off of the roads and into a safe place. And I'm talking about our police officers who drive around recklessly often, and we need to control that as well. So you and I disagree. And that happens between members of boards and citizens all the time. But I draw your attention to New York Times versus Sullivan, which is the core principle of this.
Okay, Mr. James, I do appreciate your comments, but as the chair noted, they are not on the topic of the Palo Alto Tma. And so in respect for our rules, we're going to need to conclude your comments at this time. Is that the will of chair to conclude those comments?
Yes, it is. Mr. James, please email any comments you didn't get to make. The commissioner will read them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tanner. Let's move to the next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Rebecca Eisenberg. Rebecca, you can speak now.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say that was pretty uncool to mute Aaron like that. I think his comments were related to this extent. How can we actually talk about taking cars off the street if we don't talk about housing the people who live in cars, or providing a place for the people who live in cars to live maybe in a more permanent place? And I didn't see any of that in the presentation. And so that's why it's possible to talk about the presentation while talking about things that were missing. That said, I only have 2.5 minutes. So I just learned about this Palo Alto Tma, which I understand is a nonprofit organization funded mostly by Palo Alto. So given that, we need to know who's on its payroll. I couldn't even find a list of employees before this presentation, not on the website, and I couldn't find any publicly filed documents with the IRS. Maybe I need to look harder. That's actually pretty relevant since the city funds it. What you did reveal for the first time after me doing a lot of digging is who sits on their board of directors. So I actually have, this is relevant, I have actually sat on several nonprofit board of directors, including Craigslist Foundation, and also the National Board of Legal Momentum, which is the National Organization for Women, Legal Defense and Education Fund, the oldest organization on earth that represents the needs of women and girls, and especially violence against women. And having sat on at least actually a couple other, in addition, boards of directors of nonprofits, I know from personal experience, also from being a lawyer for 30 years, that boards of directors actually have control and power over the employees. Given that, I wonder why the people that are given the biggest control over this effort to make our city car-free include only 4 organizations: Westin Hotels, Amazon.com, and a commercial developer, and the city of Palo Alto. Wouldn't it be wise to put an environmentalist and an expert on making cities car-free, someone who works for tenants, someone who works on the human being side and not the profit-making side of the equation on this board of directors? I think it's pretty appalling. I mean, fine, have one of those companies, but we all know that hotels, commercial developers, and well, sometimes commercial developers, but always Amazon needs as part of their business model to keep cars on the road. This is a terrible and absolutely wholly unfitting choice to lead this organization. Finally, and there's so much more to say, but finally, how can you actually have a presentation about taking cars off the road without talking about putting housing near jobs? Also, how about lifting the ridiculous parking requirements that are required for any housing development? Hotels don't want that. Neither does Amazon. Come on, guys. Can we take this seriously, please? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker. Next
Our
public comment.
Our next speaker is Chuck Jagoda. Chuck, you can speak now for 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I would just like to say two things. One, Steve, that presentation, I assume you were involved, but others also, was amazing. I really am very positively impressed. You took into consideration an important issue in this country right now, which is equity amongst people. You thought of disabled people, you thought of poor people, you thought of commuters, and and not only did you think of all these people and things, but you handled it all brilliantly. I mean, it was a model of efficiency. I was very, very impressed. And thank you and whoever else was involved. But my colleagues, Rebecca and Aram, were not as off topic as it may seem. They both made very important points. And, it seems to me what we need, the issues they raised, both of them, are sort of the next level. So in other words, what Steve presented was very inclusive, very evolved, very wonderful in every which way. So what would be a great next level would be to, continue, evolve, tweak, do whatever, but also think about raising the consciousness to the level that you take into consideration the things that Aram and Rebecca raised. Homeless people do need safe parking. How you might help them with the PMA, I don't know, but it's a worthy goal. And the poor, the commuters. I mean, the people that don't have so much. And this is a wonderful thing that Palo Alto, where people do have much, are really living up to the responsibility and doing something wonderful. The PTMA is very impressive. You should all be very proud. We should all be very proud of Palo Alto in this instance. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional public comments?
Yes. We have one more hand raised. The next speaker is Rob George. Rob, you can speak now.
I want to thank the commissioners. My name is Rob George. I'm one of the founding members of the Palo Alto Tma, former chair, and actively involved with the development of the TMA. I want to acknowledge the speakers' comments about their concerns about the TMA, but I'm very proud of the progress the TMA has made over the almost 6 years that the TMA has existed as a program and as an independent 501c3. Initially founded with the goal with economic prosperity to reduce traffic in the city by 30%. At our height, at the TMA's height, they were reducing car traffic downtown equivalent to emptying the Bryant Street garage. In its second phase, it focused on the equity of allowing folks to be able to work in Palo Alto without the cost of paying for an exorbitantly high parking pass. And then in the last year, as we've all experienced COVID, basically a strategy, city funded, to help with the recovery of businesses. There are so many businesses in Palo Alto that are struggling to pay their employees. And what better gift the city could give them as a transit pass to get to and from work free. I think it's a novel, but amazingly powerful tool that the city has done. And the progress is in the hands of both the collaboration of businesses, residents, and the city staff itself. So I count myself proud to be part of the organization and would be glad to talk to any of the commissioners about the work that the board, albeit small, and most of the small board members, the small businesses, have left to take care of their businesses. So we're looking to grow the board. And they have always been, because it's such a challenging task. But again, thank you to staff. Thank you to Steve and Crudy for their comments. And I'd be glad to talk to any commissioners. Rachel and Sylvia have my contact information about the trajectory of the TMA to this point and the years to come. Thank you very much.
Chair Heckman?
Yeah.
I see that Chuck Jagoda raised his hand again.
He has spoken, and so I think we only take one comment per member of the public per agenda item. So Mr. Jagoda, to the extent there are things you realize you didn't say but would like to, please email them to us and we'll read them. Are there any other hands raised for people who have not spoken?
I don't see any hands raised. That concludes our public comments for this item.
All right, we will now turn to commissioner discussion. Commissioner Templeton, your hand is first.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this presentation. I am really excited that we're talking about this and so grateful that you did bring it to us on the PTC. The first question I have, and you may already have an answer for this, but I'm just wondering if we can hear more about students. So I love that your programs address low-income workers and getting them onto transit and getting single occupancy vehicles off the streets. I'm wondering, do we have any similar programs in mind for students, or would they be eligible, since they're not necessarily working? I don't know if they would be eligible for the current programs.
So I'll speak to that. Sure. It pleases you, and maybe Steve might want to chime in. But just to speak to the purpose of the formation of the TMA, going back to that colleagues memo, originally back in, I guess it was 2016, the TMA was really formed to reduce the single occupancy vehicle trips to Palo Alto, specifically targeting employees that were, taking up not only the parking capacity in the downtown, which was really impacted, but also, impacting the congestion and frankly pollution. So that's really the reason why the colleagues memo was put out, and the Palo Alto TMA as a nonprofit was formed, was to address that need. So that said, students is not really what I would say is a key focus of them, and noting that.
Hold on a second. I understand all of that, Mr. Cami. I really appreciate you bringing that up. But as somebody who, I mean, it's technically not a single occupancy vehicle if I'm driving my child around, but if I could put them on a bus instead, it would be one less car.
Yeah. So just furthering that point, I think that is work of the Office of Transportation specifically, because really this organization was formed with that sole purpose of eliminating single occupancy vehicles. That's
All right.
not to say that.
Then I'll turn the question to you.
Yeah, but if I can just finish, I just want to note that also the funding that the city provides for the Palo Alto TMA, and noting that they also get funding from their contributing members that sit on their boards and otherwise. But the money that we provide comes out of our University Avenue parking funds, and thus it needs to have a nexus to reduction of parking or impact in that area in order to be used for that program. So. Sorry.
Oh, thank you. It does not answer my question at all. So you're saying that they won't look at it because of where the funding comes from?
No, I'm sorry. I'm just mentioning that that dictates how the funding needs to be spent. It needs to be spent for a purpose that impacts downtown. If you're talking about students getting to downtown, because I'm assuming you're talking about students getting to school.
No, I'm not talking about school at all.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I didn't. Yeah, yeah.
So are you talking about students that work in retail in downtown? Because that's really what
every kind of activity that a student would need to get to that someone else is driving them right now.
Yeah. So just to mention, I think the program is really set up to primarily target low-income workers in downtown. To the extent that a student that lives in Palo Alto or otherwise anywhere is an employee that is a daily commuter to downtown, certainly the program would include them in the target, regardless of age or any other.
Okay, so if they work, I was reading through on their website and it wasn't clear if there was an age requirement. So as long as if they had a job, they could qualify for these programs. But if
I believe so. I'll let Steve answer that more.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry for the confusion there.
That's okay. It's good to talk about.
Yeah, so definitely any type of employee. And I guess I heard actually the Stanford Shopping Center's worker demographics skewed a lot to students and first job type situations for what that's been.
And do they, if they get these passes or these benefits, it wouldn't just be for work. They could use it for any other kind of activity around, right? So I wanted to emphasize that is a demographic that's important, not only because sometimes they rely on other people to take them, so that doubles the amount of time that car is on the road, but also because if people can get accustomed to public transit and alternate modes of transportation, then that's something they can take with them for their whole lives. So I just appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Templeton. Commissioner Olczyk, you are next.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so first I just want to say thank you for this presentation. This is a interesting sort of, this is a discussion that I think is really relevant to sort of a lot of the review that we do, because we often utilize these quote unquote TDMA solutions, these TDM solutions, excuse me, and we invoke sort of the TDMA when we're reviewing development projects in the city and imposing conditions that need to be met that require TDM programming. And so I think this idea, but number one, I really like the presentation. I did not know the group behind the TDMA by name, and so that I think that's good information. I have a few questions. They're sort of high level. Let me do the first one. It's sort of a two-part. The first one is, what are the most effective programs that the I guess the leadership or the association has learned about that they are hoping to add to our, I guess, tool chest, if you will. And a similar flip side of that is, are there programs that you've learned of that are very successful, but that you don't think could be added to the Palo Alto environment for making greater reductions in the SOVs trips?
Point one is that, interestingly, at the regional level, MTC's policy EN7 talks about capping Bay Area SOV commuting at 40% SOV by 2035. So that would be the most ambitious policy in the US right now, primarily driven by meeting the greenhouse gas emission goals. So that is potentially a game changer over the years. And then, from a cost efficacy standpoint, more information on the Gates Foundation on row 1 is they will charge you $12 a day if you SOV, and they'll give you $3 a day if you take an alternative mode. So it's a carrot and stick. And if you do all the math, the cost of reducing an SOV commute is a negative cost of $400. Whereas like a Stanford campus like TDM is sort of throttled to be revenue neutral. The SOV parkers pay for the alternative takers. And then I think it's also interesting to think about the University Avenue Parking Fund that is typically non-resident in commuters who are buying parking permits that then go to fund other non-SOV commutes. So there's a nice behavioral nexus there. Sort of missing from the TMA's toolkit, sort of as not having the scale of SRP Go, would be a van pool program like Commute by Enterprise, or having the scale to do a private bus service. Like SRP Go has a few buses, and certainly, Facebook and Google famously have many. That's the main thing. And, we really hope that a combination of changes can really energize biking, including there's theories that, with a better price performance on electric bikes, we can increase bike commute distance for your average schmo as opposed to your hardcore biker to up to 10 miles. So you get that catchment area. And I think I've said hopefully enough to answer Commissioner Alczek's question.
Yeah, no, that does the I don't know who would do this. Is this the transportation department or the association? Is there a collection of data that occurs that you, for example, that you would know for how many of the individuals who you're targeting with these programs live within a certain radius? So, for example, with extended bike access, if you will, because of electrification of bicycles, there's a threshold. And so if a certain population of the people you're working on with such a program are beyond 10 or 15 miles, then maybe that, do you have an idea of sort of the concentric circles of distance that many of the targets for these programs live?
Yes, we have some idea, and I know that
that sounds very Big Brother, right? Right, but it would be interesting to know just how far people are commuting into downtown for the various jobs. And I would not to cut you off, but I would presume, and I know we shouldn't make assumptions, but I would presume that as the income goes down, the distance goes up. Which is, I don't know if if the data supports that, but I would presume that those that are working that are earning the least amount are probably traveling the farthest, but I don't know if we have data that. So that's sort of my question.
Yeah, and I would propose that we'll provide commute shed information to staff to get to you, and analysis of commute rings from 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, and 20 and beyond. And it's sort of, the key takeaway from that is for the Stanfords and the Facebooks and the Googles of the world, the 0 to 5 mile segment has the highest SOV, because SOV is really competitive, unfortunately, there. So that's why, they have a theory that electric bikes are pretty time competitive with SOV in that ring. But, and of course, the 0 to 5 mile ring is where you get the active modes, and the 20 plus is where you get carpooling. From our commute shed, plotting of where people live, there's a lot of potential along the Caltrain spine, which is good as long as we can solve that first mile problem. So we can provide that. And also, I think potentially we can provide this analysis of the hammering on low-income commuters where their commute distance are getting worse. They're getting priced out of the easier commutes, right? So like Il Fornaio used to say, yeah, everybody used to live in East Palo Alto. And they're like, no more. And in fact, some people had to move out of state. Things got so bad financially.
Okay. One more thought that I want to sort of run by you guys, which is that in my mind, a lot of these TDM measures serve to make the growth in the community more palatable because they diminish the impacts that result from that growth, as if to suggest that a resident would be more comfortable with a project if the impacts of that project were reduced by a TDM measure, which would suggest that none of these TDM measures are really serving residents directly. And I'm not asking this question because Commissioner Templeton sort of asked a slight variation of it, but I guess my question would be, where would you go? Let me ask this a different question. What would the responsible department be if community members wanted to understand where to send inquiries about improvements in reducing their trips within the city, and how those programs, or where would that go?
If I might, Commissioner Alchek, before I hand it over to Sylvia and to Philip, I think that generally speaking, the TDM measures that the TMA is implementing and that we focus on today do focus on commuters coming to Palo Alto. That isn't to say that just generally TM overall as a field only focuses on folks coming into a city. So certainly every Palo Alton who bikes to the train station and takes a train is reducing SOV use. And that certainly is something that the city would want to see increase, reduction of the SOV use. So when TM might be applied to a development, depending on what the development is, it could be a service that does provide some incentive or some carrot or stick for the resident of Palo Alto to not take their car by themselves to a trip. So for example, the carpooling system, other things could be available to residents of Palo Alto if they are commuting outward to work or even commuting within Palo Alto. I think as Steve mentioned, when you're really close to the city and close to your job, the incentive to take your car is pretty easy, right? It's a short drive, you got it, you just hop in and you're there. So I might ask if Sylvia or Philip can address kind of how we have maybe some resident focused programs on getting our residents of Palo Alto out of their vehicles, at least their vehicles by themselves.
Okay, I wasn't sure Sylvia was going to jump in, but just to mention, what we do on a local region is we focus on building infrastructure. As an example, bicycle infrastructure, and providing local amenities that enhance that. And that also, includes, as was mentioned, if there's a local business and someone, lives and works in Palo Alto, hopefully that business has, amenities for storing a bicycle, or potentially giving somebody a shower, or, potentially is, mindful of their parking infrastructure and their availability of parking. And if they don't have enough, parking, or there isn't adequate parking available, then they're providing, and some sort of incentives to carpool, or hopefully take transit if they're available local to transit. And that's really what a good TDM plan should supply.
Okay. All right. Well, those are the comments that I had so far. I would add that I support this idea of sort of focusing our public comments on the item, and I would also suggest that maybe during the part of the meeting where we discuss future agenda topics, maybe staff could help the commission understand when a conversation about I guess car living, which is an important topic, and I don't think anybody on this commission intended to diminish the importance and relevance of that conversation. Maybe at the end of the meeting tonight, we could have an idea of when a topic like that could be addressed and effectively and appropriately. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Commissioner Alchek. Vice Chair Rupavar, followed by Commissioner Suma.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation today. It was extremely enlightening. I just had a couple comments that I'll go through. I had the same question Commissioner Alchek had about where are the commuters coming from, like specific cities, or do we have data? Because I think we need to know where they're coming from in order to create a plan that effectively addresses it. Like if the vast majority of commuters are coming from areas 20 plus miles away, I don't think it's realistic to think or expect or emphasize the coming in by bike. I don't think most people are going to bike 25, 30 miles. Also, I think there was, kind of a desire to promote e-bike and e-scooter. And I guess to me, that seemed a little bit inconsistent with our desire, and people can disagree with me, but our desire to, serve low-income people, because I hear in one breath I'm being told, it's low-income people, they have to move their cars every 2 hours, they don't want to pay for parking. And then while you guys were talking, I looked up e-bikes and they're between $600 to $8,000. So I don't think anybody who is like having difficulty is then going to drop like that much money on an e-bike. Okay, so another comment I had was, I don't know if you guys have thought about this and if it's of use, but I used to live in Washington, D.C., and they had an amazing public transportation system. They had something called the Circulator in addition to a public bus. And what that did is it was focused on the downtown area, the Georgetown area. But it would stop at like maybe 3 to 4 key stops that they knew people would be coming in to Georgetown for employees, et cetera. And the purpose was to reduce like congestion and traffic. That way, like you don't have to park in Georgetown in order to work there or whatever. The Circulator would come on the regular and you could park, 2 miles, 3 miles away in a different garage or wherever in a different part of DC, and take the Circulator and go into Georgetown. It was intended to reduce congestion. So I wanted to throw that out as an idea. And I guess like along the same lines as that, and I want to hear more about cross-city initiatives and what we had in mind there. So for example, if we're learning that the vast majority of people are coming in from, let's just say Mountain View. I don't know if that's true. Let's just say Mountain View. Like, can we collaborate with Mountain View to have like a Circulator or some sort of system that picks people up, from that city and brings them in? I'm not suggesting the private bus because I saw the price on that of $5,000. It's something that's like public, but that could still serve the need. So I think those are my comments. Love to hear your thoughts on, where am I misunderstanding something, or where are we on cross-city initiatives?
Well, I think I'll just chime in on a few of those items, and probably I'll miss quite a lot of thoughts there, but probably I'll miss some of them, but I'll try. One thing on the e-bikes, yes, they can be fairly expensive, but if you're considering that as a comparison to a car with insurance and gas, they're two different worlds. So even if the e-bike costs $600, which I have one that was much cheaper than that personally, was around $200. But if you had a $600 e-bike, it's significantly, I mean, you pay for that once and that's, a couple months of insurance. Forget about the cost of gas in a car. But moving on, the cross-city initiatives, and Steve can really probably speak to this a lot about their efforts, but the real challenge is, I think, in Palo Alto, when you look at where people are coming from, the answer is everywhere except for Palo Alto, probably. So I think what you have is you have a lot of people coming from San Jose, you have a lot of people coming from the East Bay, and you have people coming from all around up and down the peninsula, all the way from San Francisco. The good news is, and this is where Palo Alto really has a really great transportation infrastructure already there, is Caltrain. Caltrain is a huge mover of these people. And that's where I think you heard Steve earlier in his presentation get really excited when he was discussing that, there might be an opportunity for Caltrain Go Pass to go to some of his low-income workers or some of his people that really can't afford the Go Pass. Because the challenge with the Go Pass system is, if you want to be an employer that provides a Go Pass, you have to buy a Go Pass for every one of your employees, every single one. And as an example, the city of Palo Alto does. So we buy Go Passes for all our employees. Some of our employees work at the MSC, which is off over down by the 101. And sorry, the reality is those people are not taking Caltrain. So there are unused passes in the city, and we have to buy one for every single employee. So that's a real opportunity for the TMA to provide more transit passes. And noting that the Palo Alto transit stop is currently in the entire Caltrain system the highest used stop. Pre-COVID, it was the second highest, but right now it's the highest used stop. Probably primarily due to the medical center and a lot of essential trips that are happening there. But that's a real opportunity. And then the people that are coming from the East Bay are able to take the Dumbarton Express, and we have VTA buses and Samtrans buses that all come to Palo Alto. So those are kind of the cross-county, cross-city connections that occur. But really, that's the challenge with this, is we do have people coming from everywhere. So I don't know that I answered all of your questions, but Steve, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Just one tidbit to keep in mind, that uniquely in the world, there's this 36-mile commute for tech workers who like the culture of San Francisco and like to work in Silicon Valley. That's changing a little bit, but nowhere is there this crazy 36-mile commute that's so popular, except San Francisco to Silicon Valley. And that's the reason Caltrain, one of the reasons in the past that Caltrain has this great ridership. And it's amazing, if you worked at Palantir or Amazon, you could walk one block to get to your job in downtown Palo Alto. So just wanted to throw that in as a tidbit. And again, I'll follow up with staff on commute chat information and give a graphical depiction of, yes, everybody's living all over the place, unfortunately.
Okay, I had one follow-up. Thank you. Those are helpful. I have one follow-up comment to kind of maybe challenge you a bit more on the e-bike issue. I know it just doesn't settle well with me. I don't think people are gonna, if somebody's low income, they're gonna replace their car with an e-bike. You still need your car to transport your family. You still need your car for groceries. Like, you still need to pay insurance on that car. Maybe like I could see if the economics of the gas, but to me, an e-bike seems like a luxury, like add-on, instead of, I don't know, like I just don't,
I just don't think like it just doesn't settle well with me. Like I just have a hard time believing that somebody who's low income is going to be like, let me forego my car and buy an e-bike. So those are my comments.
If I might, Commissioner, I think that is a fine point. I think that certainly, you know, I have a vehicle and I have bikes. I don't have an e-bike yet. But I think part of it is that it's about, there are a diversity of low income workers. You can be a pretty high income generally person and still be low income in the Bay Area due to circumstances like your family size and things like that. And so while the TMA is certainly focused on service workers, they do have a number of kind of, I guess, maybe Steve, would you say mid-level managers, entry-level managers who are earning like moderate incomes and they're still not super high incomes, but they might have means where they can have an e-bike and a vehicle as part of their commuting. And then of course they may take the e-bike to a transit stop, to a BART station. As Mr. Rainey was saying, folks are still along the Caltrain spine, but maybe getting to the Caltrain station is just a little far. And so those are some areas where an e-bike can help. It's certainly not going to help everybody, and certainly is not going to replace a vehicle if you have, you know, a family that you need to take around. So certainly would be a luxury for some of our lowest income households. That's to be sure.
Thank you.
I'm so
That's
sorry.
really helpful.
I'm so sorry. I have to chime in because I actually have staff that's listening on this call that uses an e-bike to take their kids around Palo Alto. So I just have to say that that is a real thing, that you don't have to have a car to get around. And there are people that do not do that. And personally, I typically commute to Palo Alto from the city of Oakland, which is quite far, by taking transit and using either e-bike or e-skateboard. So I just want to note that there are possibilities to do that, and that some people do. I know that my Safe Routes to School coordinator, Rosie, is on the line right now, and she has a cargo bike that she takes her kid around Palo Alto in. So I'm not saying that certainly it's a choice, and it's something that everyone has to feel comfortable with, you know, their mode of transit, but or travel, I should say. But for somebody that's considering the cost of a parking permit in Palo Alto, the time they spend potentially in congestion or circling or looking for parking, and the cost of insurance and gas and all of that, there is mathematics that do come into it depending on, you know, where you are.
You know, it'd be helpful if we could get the math and stuff. I think that would, at least for me, to be able to see the math and the economics. And I think maybe educating the public on that would be tremendous, to show people the economics of it.
Sure. Can I?
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Can I jump in here? I think in the coming discussions that council is going to have around the Sustainability Climate Action Plan, there is a certain amount of, I think there'll be a certain amount of economic modeling that shows the cost benefit for bikes and e-bikes over cars, over even electric vehicles. I mean, the cost savings that you get are tremendous. And there is a tremendous diversity of bikes out there. If you've traveled in Europe, you've probably seen, you know, particularly, you know, Amsterdam, you know, Northern Europe. There's a tremendous diversity of bikes out there that we're just beginning to see on our own streets. You've probably seen some box bikes on our streets. If you've seen, there's, you know, moms who carry 3-4 kids on one bike. So, I mean, I think that's our future, frankly. I look forward to bringing more information like this to the commission.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Thank you. I'd like to move forward to Commissioner Suma.
Thank you so much, Chair. Well, I'd first like to thank my colleagues, Commissioner Rupavar, for bringing up something that I think is really important when we think about people that can use, that have the luxury of not having to use a vehicle to accommodate their work needs and their family needs. We are really talking about, in most cases, a privileged class of people. And I think that we have to keep that in mind when we're talking about these things. And I'd also like to thank Commissioner Alchek for acknowledging the members of the public who maybe didn't speak to the right topic, but who are concerned about certain members of our community. That being said, I'll move back to more specifics about the issue at hand. And something that has troubled me about the TMA, which is now called the PATMA, is and this is sort of a little outside of our purview, so I don't expect to be answered specifically on this, but I don't understand the finances of this group. Who's financing it, how it's being paid for, and what it's paying for. So I just want to say that because I think it's a little mysterious. And then I wanted to ask a variety of questions, and one is about a member of the staff mentioned that this was set up for downtown, but it's now extended to also Cal Ave. So I wanted to get California Avenue Business District. So I wanted to get some clarification of how that's working. If there's members of the California Avenue business community that are also participating in this.
I don't see Philip, so I'll answer those. So regarding who funds the TMA, there's a council, there's an annual report that the TMA provides to the council that that shows their income and revenue for their programs. So we can forward that to you if you want to see that. They are mostly funded by the public, by the city for their programs, though members do provide dues. And then regarding downtown and Cal Ave, I guess Steve can talk to how well the expansion to Cal Ave is working. But until recently, we had Zareen Khan from Zareen's on the board, and I think Steve is working to get someone else from Cal Ave on the board.
And I'll just jump in before Steve does. Apologies. Just to add on to that, as Sylvia mentioned, the primary funding for the TMA currently is city funds. It comes out of parking funds. So if somebody purchases a parking permit in downtown Palo Alto, that's funding essentially removing cars off the road that are coming to downtown, and the same thing for California Avenue. So that's why the parking fund actually pays for removing cars that would be parking in downtown. If that makes sense.
So that's for Cal Ave business area also?
Correct.
That there's a funding?
Yes. So in the beginning of the year, the budgeting process, it was expanded to California Avenue in addition to University Avenue.
Oh.
Although the TMA did have a pilot that was funded by a private organization, not the city of Palo Alto. So they had been trying out a pilot in California Avenue before this year. So this year they officially expanded to California Avenue with the city's support.
Okay, thank you for that. It's a little bit mysterious to me what this agency is and how it's organized a little bit.
I just want to say, I think that's the main reason why we wanted the TMA here tonight, is it's to remove a little of that mysteriousness.
Oh, okay, thanks for that then. And then the staff report, I don't know if you mentioned it in one of your slides, but our staff report said, I think that, and I think there is an emphasis on helping downtown, specifically low-income commuters. And it was either 270, pardon me, I have too many pieces of paper in front of me, or 240 something. Low-income commuters downtown were served by, I think, getting transit passes. And I was just wondering what percentage of downtown, I think it was specifically downtown, low-income commuters that represents, and also if you have data on how many are using the passes.
Steve, I think that one's for you.
Sorry.
So we used to think that there were 2,000 service workers downtown and 3,000 other kinds of workers downtown. You know, that's completely changed. We don't have great numbers at all. So we used to be able to calculate the nominal commute mode share that we shifted and put that in our annual reports. And like it was 11.9% in 1 year. And that's the transit subsidy. And we also have a Lyft after hours program. So if you don't take a car in to start your job at the bar at 4 p.m. to get off at midnight, we'll give you a Lyft home. And so combining the Lyft after hour program and the transit, those are income limited. And then the Waze carpool covers all kinds of workers, as will the Bike Love commute incentive program. And there was a real push to have programs not just for low income workers. And so, and of course, you know, the city is kind of very enthusiastic about increasing bike use. So the Bike Love program makes sense that way. But I don't have current commute mode share, but at one point it was 11.9%. That sort of.
Sure, I understand that the COVID, the pandemic skews everything from what would be normal understanding, but I think these were pre-COVID numbers we were giving. And for me, I really need to see the numbers, the percentage of people being served and how they were being served fleshed out more to really understand how well the program was working. So that would be my recommendation for the next time you come to us, is to have more in-depth data, just so we can understand how well you're doing, really, because from this staff report, it's not very, it's not clear. And then also, Rob George, who was a member of the public who spoke, I think that's the right name, who was a founding member of the TMA, also said the primary goal was to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips downtown by 30%. And I was just wondering if you had a simple data point on that. Like, how close are you to 30%? Are you way over 30%? Obviously pre-COVID, and understanding that we can't really know this in these unusual times.
Yes, we have the tracking towards that 30% goal broken down by our 4 economic segments. And I believe that's somewhere in our 2019 annual report. And I think we'll follow up on that and get you that information. And then Councilmember Suma, are you saying you're looking for sort of just sort of trying to gauge the commission's interest in the income statement breakdown and other sort of second level metrics that we have?
Sure. I mean, I think taking COVID out of it, because it makes everything crazy, and so I don't expect you to account for that, but just, it's hard to gauge the success and who you're serving by the information we've been given so far. So maybe it's just you have the information and we haven't got it, or I'm just saying that in the future, for me personally, as planning commissioner, it would be important to have more specific and detailed data on these numbers. And that's all I'm saying, because it's a study session. And so I'm hoping that that's helpful for you, the agency going forward, to know that I would like to see more data on that. And then the one last thing I'll say is there was one slide that showed that I think Seattle, or maybe it was just a single employer in the Seattle area, was actually making money on through some sort of efforts by requiring people to not use single occupancy vehicle trips to go to work. And I was wondering if I saw that incorrectly, or whether it might be something we could actually employ here in Palo Alto once things get back to normal after the pandemic.
Yeah, so that's row 1 from this slide on the Gates Foundation.
Yeah.
So it's a $12 a day stick and a $3 a day carrot is one of the greatest behavior change drivers. But that's more politically viable in Seattle than it is on the peninsula. But again, I would say that the regional MTC is pushing to cap SOV commuting at 40% by 2035. So they are considering various types of congestion pricing to provide the motivator to drive that behavior change. So it is not out of possibility at all in the future.
If I can, though, really quickly, that's actually somewhat what we do with the TMA. So we charge people that are parking in downtown, and we take that money that we get from that charge that we charge people from parking in the downtown lots and garages, and same thing in California Avenue. When we charge them, we take that money that we're charging them for that parking permit and we put it into this program for reducing single occupancy vehicles. So it's kind of similar to that. It's not as direct, where it's not it's not saying for each and every person that's making a trip downtown and driving single occupancy vehicle, we're going to give that money to somebody that's or give that to a program that's directly helping every single person. But that is essentially what's happening through this program, just to note.
Okay, and just a follow-up question, why is it more feasible, this cost recovery from paying people to not single occupancy vehicle commute? Why is that more efficient in Seattle? Is it because they have better public transportation, or is there some other reason it's more suitable to the Seattle and the Gates Foundation than it is to the peninsula?
Yeah, definitely. It's density. It's super downtown traffic congestion. Downtown San Francisco is the same thing, right? $30 a day to park downtown. And in the precise core San Francisco downtown, the SOV commute mode share is reportedly 8%, right? Like nobody who's sensible drives and pays $30 to park downtown just because other alternatives are better in so many ways. So that the pain, when you have the pain in multiple dimensions, that really helps.
So help me figure this out. Does that mean we're not charging enough for commuter parking in Palo Alto?
I'll let Steve off the hook here. on this one. I think that the simple answer to that is we could always be charging more. One of the easy metrics that you can use to compare parking prices to determine whether you think parking prices are adequate is it cheaper to park in Palo Alto than it is to buy a transit pass? Because if it's cheaper to park in Palo Alto than to buy a transit pass, then the people that potentially are trying to make that decision, not everybody can make that decision because you have to have a car, you have to have insurance. But if you are making that decision, you're going to pick whichever is cheaper, probably, especially if you're really, concerned about each and every dollar that goes in and out of your pocket, right? So right now our parking is cheaper than a year transit pass on Caltrain. So I think that this kind of discussion is a little bit outside of the purview of the TMA, but it's still a worthwhile topic to have.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just end up by saying I think the worst thing we can do in Palo Alto is make it difficult for lower income people who depend on cars, as we know, to participate in this community in any way. So thank you very much.
Lowry.
Yeah, thank you. So far you have about 5 years of whatever you want to call this, a pilot study or at least an experience set, sort of from 16 to 21. And it's a good point at which you should and are evaluating it and then saying, where do we go from here? So that's kind of what I'm focused on. And so a couple of questions just to make sure I'm getting it. In the overlay that came in the physical packet, there was a reference that pre-COVID, PATMA reduced demand for more than 300 parking spaces per month. And then I think that's the same as the number that you put in your PowerPoint, which was 387. Is that about right? So I just used the 300 because it was there. And if you divided that by the 30 days in a month, that means it's 10 cars per day, but maybe you have to divide it by 20 because that means they're only here 5 days a week. I'm trying to figure out on a daily basis what that means. How many fewer cars are there on a daily basis during the weekdays in Palo Alto as a result of this?
That's on a daily basis.
Pardon me?
That's on a daily basis.
Okay, so about 15, if you don't count weekends, cars per day.
300.
300.
300
Okay.
per day.
Okay, good. Glad I asked that question. And on the, I think it's the last slide, you calculated the second to last slide, cost of efficacy metrics. For example, Waze carpool is 1638. What did you allocate in there? What did you leave out? Specifically, did you allocate staff time on the basis of how much each of those projects was, more or less complicated? How comfortable are that those are comparing the true costs?
They are subsidy only.
Okay.
So, and the Transit Pass program is much more labor intensive than the Waze carpool or the Lyft.
Right. So if you allocated it, they would cost more. Just again, as a sort of a looking forward, what could be a more cost effective way of doing it. And did you have, for the last couple years, annual goals around this number of cars reduced? In other words, what was your sort of definition of success, and did you make it?
Yeah, I remember going to a finance committee with our TMA machine where you put money in one side and cars reduced comes out the other. And so, we hit the numbers, and in fact, we were too popular. So we got to the point where we had cash flow crises, where we had to shut down the new applications of the Transit Pass program and let some attrition happen to get so we didn't go bankrupt. I mean, we were really managing cash every single month for many months with this TMA. So we can go more cars where there's money and where there's a robust economy.
So that's an excellent introduction to my substantive question. which is how do we scale this? If we decide that this is important, I certainly think it is. What are the levers that you think are the highest priority to really scale this? I mean, Stanford, even without the GUP, was talking about bringing in thousands more. So they have to figure out a way out how to scale their TDM. So what do you think are the magic bullets here?
So new revenue sources. So we love it when the entitlement requires joining the TMA. That's a great thing. That's just TMA perspective. That's not the city's perspective. Grant funding, and then cost reduction in terms of this potential Caltrain savings is just huge. And it's just massive. 30K times 12 is 360K per year. And then, this notion that we can provide a smaller incentive, but get tons of people bike commuting, which, isn't really proven enough in the US, but, that's where, I think sort of council's heart is on SCAP is to crank up biking. And so those are sort of medium term ways to scale up to double or triple, I think. And then, eventually you've got this regional thing where capping SOV at 40%, congestion pricing. So they're talking about, the fast track charges in the express lanes, while making every single lane on the freeway chargeable, road user charging, VMT fee, stuff like that. So
a lot of the answer there is funding, and it seems like you have confidence in a number of the things that you showed on the second to last slide there.
Yeah, and this out there a decade policy hammer coming down.
Okay, good, thank you. That's all I have.
All right, I see a couple of commissioner hands up for second round comments, and so we'll go there, but I'm going to ask you to be brief. I would like to move us along to the next agenda item in the near future. So we will start with Commissioner Alchek.
I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to probe it a little bit. You had said earlier, this is to Mr. Kami, you had said earlier that every single employee of the city has to get a pass, which sort of suggested that there's this like imposition that makes the use of that program more expensive than it otherwise would need to be. I think I understand that that's a Caltrain policy. Is there a way we can communicate to Caltrans as a city formally that policy is working against itself to some extent? Because maybe we could convince more people to purchase passes if they could only buy them for the individuals who will use them in their workforce.
Yes. Well, so just to clarify on the pass program, it's called the Go Pass program, and it's a deeply discounted pass program where companies can purchase passes for all of their employees. Just to note, that's really the only way that it works for Caltrain is if they can have a company not just purchase it at a discount for a few employees, but if they can get that kind of, I don't know what that model is called, but it's the model where it's kind of like insurance, where everybody's paying into it, but not everybody uses it. That way, the insurance has the money to pay when somebody gets in an accident or something like that. If you know what I'm saying. Looks like Steve wants to jump in, but just really quickly. To note that as a city, and I personally have written letters to Caltrain previously, specifically requesting that they start considering a low income or allowing employees to join together or employers to join together to purchase bulk passes for their employees that need it. It just really hasn't gone anywhere. I think I've written
in theory, I get it. That analogy that you made for the insurance was literally perfect.
Okay.
And so what I would suggest to you is, do we as a city have a program where if an employer can't purchase Go Passes if it doesn't make financial sense for the employer to purchase Go passes for all 50 of their employees because only 10 of them will use it, does the city have like a scholarship fund or something? Could the city sort of step in and say, we'll supplement a little bit because number one, and I mean, maybe there's some reciprocal, I don't know, maybe there's a relationship with Caltrain, or it's that important to us. I don't know, or it's
Yes.
that cheap.
No, so the way it works currently is we can only, like, you have to have a city issued ID, and essentially the Go Pass is tied to that ID for the city, using the city as an example. What this new policy will allow us to do is to essentially donate our unused passes.
Okay.
So this new policy is actually exactly what you're asking for, and we're really thankful, as you know, the Office of Transportation, and I'm sure the PATMA are really, really thankful that this new policy has been passed by Caltrain.
If I can, just one thing. I know Steve wants to jump in. It may help to understand the pass is a physical little sticker on your ID. And so it's not like the Clipper card program that Steve was describing where it's loaded monthly. It's like a little thing on your badge. And so there's a physical like donation that would happen of the excess amount that we are not using that would go to organizations, which Steve mentioned would help to save significant time and resources that they have to do with the Clipper card updating.
Okay. Mr. Rainey, did you want to add anything before I ask my second quick question?
Yeah, the city staff themselves are super virtuous in their commute behavior, and they were just like a tech company with a little bit higher biking and 39% transit mode share. Again, this is sort of record setting for in the US for a city like Palo Alto, and that's going to be primarily Caltrain. And so the point being on pricing is that if you have the alternative of buying a year's worth of monthly passes, maybe that's $1,600 per employee. But if you're up there at 39%, then the city's, it's very cost effective for the city to buy the Go Pass. That's more like, works out to something more like $800 per year per employee, even though only 39% are using it. It's cost effective for the city for those 39% that use it, even with the strange pricing, insurance model pricing. Whereas if you're, you know, at 10% Caltrain usage, then it doesn't make sense to buy Go Pass. You should just buy monthly passes.
Okay, so thank you for that. I think I'll just make this point then. You know, there are buildings in San Francisco where it costs $54 a day to park. And in those buildings work individuals who make $654 an hour. And so the, you know, that's a not, I guess what I'm trying to say is the incomes essentially provide for that behavior. And what I would suggest to you, and this is a bit responsive to Commissioner Suma, Palo Alto Ford actually did a presentation once, and if I'm getting this wrong, I will correct myself, but I will reach out to them. They had a presentation, I believe, that was called The High Cost of Free Parking, which I think Mr. Rainey he has sort of subtly suggested to us that we are bankrupting his efforts by not making it more expensive to ignore his efforts, if you will. And so, you know, it's funny because you made that comment about insurance and I thought, oh yeah, that's a great analogy. And then I thought, we are bankrupting Caltrain as a city by asking them to give us an even deeper discount and to make more, concessions to us so that we can improve our Go Pass, distribution, because we're essentially saying to them that their passes need to be so cheap in order to be appealing. And if we charged for parking in downtown, and by the way, congestion charge. I mean, we have to, if we can't even stomach like meters in our downtown, we have to be so far away from congestion charging or, highway lane use charging. I mean, those are, I guess what I would suggest to you is that presentation, The High Cost of Free Parking, is so relevant. And I will try to get a hold of it and distribute it, because this isn't the night to talk about whether we should be instituting parking meters downtown, but for sure our parking pricing strategy is actually strangling our effort to improve this situation. And if, for example, the individuals who had the most wealth were incentivized to some extent to pay more for the access, we would have all these additional funds, right? To then, he wouldn't be worrying about going bankrupt 4 months out of every year. He would be sitting on a huge pile of money, and maybe a $5,000 bus ride wouldn't be out of the question. And so, you know, I think actually we need to at some point have that conversation. We need to at some point investigate that path, because we're sort of acting like the best course of action would be for the Caltrain to give us even greater concessions. And that, to me, now that I'm saying it out loud, is ridiculous, considering their ridership is so low. They're struggling at every pass. We're basically passing tax laws to, fund them that are controversial. So it seems to me like actually that is a piece of this conversation that we should have at some other point. So I'll try to get a hold of that presentation and send it your way.
I can. The High Cost of Free Parking is a very, very famous book written by Donald Shoup, which is exactly
right. They did a presentation. I think they had a few speakers on it, and I'm sure if it was Palo Alto Ford, they probably taped it. And so maybe I could get that link and share it, and it'd be particularly relevant. And I'm sure their conversation was particularly relevant to Palo Alto.
Thank you, Commissioner Templeton.
Thank you, Chair. And I acknowledge your comments about trying to get through this agenda item. One thing that has struck me listening to the comments, it's not really clear what staff is looking for in the discussion tonight. And I say this just hearing several ideas about generally dealing with parking and mitigating emissions and reducing congestion and demand, and hearing pushback on that doesn't fit into this program or this niche. Is it possible for staff to clarify what they're looking for from us, and have we given you what you need?
Yeah, sure. So I think, not to say that anything that's being discussed tonight doesn't fit in. I think this all is really relevant to the conversation, which is really around transportation, just generally transportation in Palo Alto. I think what we were seeking tonight is a couple of different things. One is, which I think is really clear, is to provide more awareness around the PATMA, and also to get feedback on the TMA, the programs the TMA is working on, maybe any ideas or suggestions you might have, and really ideas to grow the TMA. And I think definitely and also ways that you would like to hear about the TMA. I think Steve tonight is taking probably copious notes about, for instance, how PTC and potentially the council might want to hear about how the TMA has been operating. Yeah, he just held it up. He's got a big list of notes. So I think that's really what the reason we wanted to get in front of the PTC. I think that the TMA is an organization. It's became a nonprofit about a year ago. That's really still trying to grow and figure out what exactly they can do, and is still trying to get board members to join, is still trying to get new businesses to join. I'm sure they would love if the PTC had an application in front of them, if they would tell the person that's applying to join the TMA. So I think they're trying to build advocacy as well. And Steve, I hope I didn't step all over any of your lines, but Steve, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Phil. Mr. Kami, I guess I just want to go back then and say, if we're saving 300 trips a day through this program that targets low-income workers that work in California Avenue and University Avenue, and we're looking for ideas on how to grow that impact and possibly affect more numbers of cars. I don't want to let it go just because it doesn't fit into this box, to say that figuring out how to deal with the large amount of after school activity, traffic, other kinds of localized stuff that's happening perhaps over our neighboring borders, right, to Mountain View, to Redwood City, Menlo Park, East Palo Alto. Those are all things that I see firsthand quite often. It's also stuff that I think really contributes to congestion at a busy time. So perhaps if it doesn't fit into the PATMA set of resources, maybe there's another conversation that we could have in the future to talk about some of the localized traffic phenomenon and trying to address that. Thanks.
Commissioner Suma, I saw your hand go up, but then down. Are you okay?
I'm okay, thank you. I'll save the comment for another conversation.
All right, thank you. So then I'm going to say a couple things and then move us along. I do want to thank the PATMA and staff for the presentation. For me, it was really an introduction and an education because honestly, before I got the staff packet, I didn't know there was such thing as a PATMA. You haven't been before us in the last year, I think one of the, first of all, this was a more robust, as often happens, the conversation among the commissioners was more robust than I was anticipating coming in. But one of the things that it really helped me to listen to the variety of comments and the responses from staff and from Mr. Rainey is really to understand kind of where, at least as currently envisioned, the PATMA ends and our City of Palo Alto Transportation Department begins. And so, so I agree with some of the comments earlier that all of these things, I think, that the commissioners have raised were good to voice. And it's just a question of sort of which bucket they fall into. Some of them are sort of in PATMA's purview, but a lot of them, I think, are messages that we are sending to our transportation department, and I have every indication that they're hearing those, and they can carry those thoughts forward and fold them into their forward thinking. So I think it was a really great conversation, and I thank all the commissioners as well as PATMA and staff for contributing to it. So I would like to now move us on to the next agenda item in our, it's another study session. It's agenda item number 2, which is the status of the South Palo Alto Bikeways project funded by the VERBS grant and the Community Engagement Plan. And before we receive the staff report there, I'd like to have Commissioner Rupavar address the commission.
Thank you. I will be recusing myself from this item because I live within 500 feet of the project, and I spoke with the city attorney, and that's what's appropriate in this case. So I will be leaving. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and good night. So Commissioner Templeton, I see your hand up. Are you wanting to say something before we receive the report? Okay.
Yes, I wanted to say that it's 8:30. I wonder if we might have a 5-minute break.
Oh, okay, that's a wonderful idea. Let's do that. So I have 8:32, and let's come back at 8:38.
Baby, Bobby.
So it appears that we have the 5 commissioners moving forward. Are we ready to resume?
We are ready to resume. Ben and Medina, if you want to remove the pausing slide, we are going to agenda item 3. Chair, if that's all right, I would like to introduce Philip Kemi for the item. Did you want to say a few words first, Chair Heckman?
Just that it's item 2 in the 3rd slot.
2, sorry, yes, you're right. Thank you. So Director Kemi, you want to take it away?
Okay, thank you. And thank you for listening to all these transportation items tonight. Good evening. I'm Philip Kemi, Chief Transportation Official. I've already been talking tonight, so we all know that. I'm not sure, is the PowerPoint showing yet? Looks like it's just getting ready to show. But tonight, the Office of Transportation is before you to engage you on the South Palo Alto Bikeways project. And specifically, we're here to share details about our proposed community engagement plan, which really stems from the lessons that we've learned from other projects and from other prior transportation projects. And as you might be aware, on Monday, the City Council approved this proposed community engagement plan, and they also assisted us in providing additional groups that we can reach out to. We're here before you tonight seeking similar feedback, any ways that we can further improve the community engagement plan that was developed. And the PTC is actually of specific interest to us in this process because we intend to return to the PTC after almost every single phase of the outreach, and it's a 5-phased approach to the outreach. Additionally, tonight we'll share the proposed timeline, which includes next steps to move the project forward and to meet grant deadlines. And I think now, Sylvia, you might have to skip 2 slides. Yeah, if you just go one more slide. There we go. So just to give some project background, this project is funded by a $919,000 grant through the Vehicle Emissions Reductions Based at Schools program, or VERBS, that was actually applied for by the Office of Transportation in 2017. And the project consists of upgrading bicycle facilities on 3 segments: the Waverly Path, the East Meadow Drive, and Fabian Way. And due to grant timelines, this project has to have authorization for construction from Caltrans by January of 2023. Next slide. This project is actually a follow-up to a 2010 VERBS grant that was that had developed the initial walk and roll maps for PAUSD schools. And in this planning process, the Waverly Path was specifically identified as needing improvements, and it certainly has not gotten any better since then. It's in some serious disrepair. And also enhanced bikeways on Fabian and East Meadow were identified as key projects in the council-approved 2012 Bicycle and Pedestrian Transportation Plan. And then further, council asked staff to develop a Class 4 separated bikeway on East Meadow in 2015. So not including the current pandemic, cycling to schools whose catchment areas encompass this project have seen an increase in student bicycle mode share since we initially applied for this project and going back to 2016. And with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Sylvia Starlak, our Transportation Planning Manager.
Thanks, Philip. This slide shows the project map that shows where the segments are located: the Waverly Path Waverly Path, East Meadow, and Fabian Way. Note that this project is essentially the gateway project for the Adobe Bridge, which is currently under construction by Public Works. Pedestrians and cyclists using that bridge and the Adobe Creek Reach Trail will find themselves on this project. Creating low-stress bicycle facilities to connect to the new bridge will capitalize on our investment in the bridge and our investments on the nearby Charleston corridor, which is on this map in that dark blue that connects to those two legs that you see there in the light blue. Beyond this project's benefits for the school commute, this project improves links to the Charleston Corridor project, the many public and private facilities housed at or adjacent to Mitchell Park, the facilities at the JCC, as well as to employment and housing on Fabian Way. As you know, the JCC serves a wide range of users, including vulnerable road users such as children and seniors. Is it not switching? Oh, sorry, it's got, there we go. The Waverly Path improvements include widening the path by at least 2 feet where feasible to accommodate high flows and varying speeds of cyclists and pedestrians. Repaving and regrading will help to mitigate the uneven surfaces caused by root damage. And school staff told us about, at the time, it was 8 injuries due to the unevenness of the path. And along East Meadow, proposed changes to include bicyclist visibility and safety include installing a protected or buffered bicycle facility that may require some parking reconfiguration or limited removal. This is a school commute corridor and a popular bike route. Additional facilities are needed to accommodate peak school commute traffic volumes. The bike lanes are immediately adjacent to travel and parking lanes with no buffer space in between. Along Fabian Way, the project will enhance bicyclist safety where there is only a striped bike lane. And the project there could include reconfiguration with a travel lane reduction to accommodate a protected bicycle facility in each direction. Given the large crossing distances, high volumes of traffic, and current lane configuration with narrow or shared bike and parking lanes, as you can see in the picture on the right, riding on or crossing Fabian Way as part of a walking or biking school commute with children is a challenge. Parents who live here have told us that they won't bike to school from here given the poor bicycle facilities. We're here today to inform you that we are initiating project planning. Since it has been a few years, we're reevaluating the initial concept plan that's in the application. And this spring, we will develop a couple concept planned alternatives and conduct community engagement to collect feedback on those alternatives. We anticipate returning we're going to go to council in late spring with a final concept plan based on findings from this round of community engagement. And we plan on releasing a request for proposal for design in the summer if our concept plan is approved. And we're going to move into our community engagement plan. Our community engagement plan updates our approach from the Neighborhood Transportation Safety and Bicycle Boulevards project. We've modeled the plan on the spectrum of public participation framework developed by the IAP2, the International Association of Public Participation, to determine the right level of engagement for each phase of the project. The draft purpose statements for the community engagement plan are to, number 1, provide accessible information on the South Palo Alto Bikeways project alternatives and to provide opportunities and platforms to enhance and encourage community engagement and participation. To identify, engage, and work with key stakeholders to inform the community about the project, the urgency of timely decisions, and the need to participate to assist council to adopt a preferred solution. This is our draft community engagement schedule with the level of engagement indicated for each phase of the project. We are using the involve level of engagement until the final design is approved. Note that there is a lag time between public engagement for stages 2 and 3, and that is due to the need to get necessary environmental clearance and school district permission to work on their property. We will be working on the project all of this time. These stages only refer to the when we will be doing active outreach with the community. The full draft project schedule with milestones is on page 11 of the PTC staff report or packet page 18 if you want to refer to that. So we have two main questions and a third general question for you tonight. And the first is, did we omit any groups in our community engagement plan? This is the stakeholder list. I'll just run through the questions and we'll come back to this. The second question is, which outreach and communications tools are most or least effective given our limited time and budget? And this is a list of our tools. And then the third question we have is, do you have any other feedback for us on the community engagement plan? Okay, so I will just come back here. Thank you for your attention. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you. Before we take public comment, are there any questions that any of the commissioners want to ask staff about the presentation? All right, I see no hands. So like the last item, this is a study session, so it's not a public hearing, but we do invite public comment. And so I'm now going to open the floor for public comments on this agenda item. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak. On the Zoom app, there's a raise hand button on the bottom of your screen. If you are dialing in from a phone, press *9. Let's see, Ms. Klicheva, are there any public speakers for this item?
Yes, we have one hand raised. Rebecca Eisenberg, you can speak now.
Hi again. Thanks so much for letting me speak. I first want to say this is such a great plan and it's so exciting and it seems to remedy so many of the problems of the past, which I won't mention because it doesn't matter. But I have all that aside, all that stands. And then in addition, just two quick thoughts. First is, I noticed that Commissioner Ruparvar was, stepped out. What is that word? Kurt, what's that word? Okay, you know what I'm talking about, due to conflict, but I'm not so sure it actually is a conflict of interest, the fact that she lives close to this. When I complain about conflict of interest, I'm really talking about situations where there's a potential tit for tat, like money going back and forth, like one of you is being recused, is the word, where one of you is being extra kind to an applicant because you're hoping for something from the applicant in exchange, whether it's a campaign contribution or whether it's maybe admission to a private school or whether it's Lord knows what. I don't really think that is really the case here. So maybe it could be, this is for you all and also for the city council, and I've been begging for this, there could be like an actual focus on what the more specific rules of conflict of interest are, because quite frankly, I'm not really so confident in the city attorney's office to get that done correctly. And so that is something that you all are lawyers that, you could devote some of your expertise to. Additionally, the other thought is also related to half of your being, half of you are lawyers and your expertise is that, and I said this at the city council meeting, what good is it to create bike paths if you don't put in some sort of ordinance that protects the bike paths? So, and of course, right now I'm talking about what's about to happen with regard to Bryant Bike Boulevard, the only bike boulevard in North Palo Alto, or is it Northeast Palo Alto, that so many hundreds, possibly thousands of little kids use when school's actually in session. Kids as young as 4 years old ride up and down the Bryant Street Bike Boulevard. And now we potentially have a private school putting a huge garage underground with entrance and or exits onto Bike Boulevard that is going to create a real freaking safety hazard unavoidably for these little kids who are going to be biking. So when you talk about this, can you please put in, which obviously I oppose that garage so strongly, and you've heard me say that for safety reasons. I have 2 children myself. Anyway, so maybe if you're going to create a bike path, put in place, recommend an ordinance to the city council to protect the safety of the bike path. Please, I beg of you, please. Thank you very much for your consideration. Have a good night.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments, hands raised?
Yes, Aaron James, you can speak now.
Okay, I'll be brief. I just wanted to support the bike plan. It seems to be, a good one, something that's much needed to get us out to the Baylands and to have students traveling in a safe manner. But I also want to support Rebecca's comments about the Castillejo school matter. I won't present it tonight, but when Castillejo comes up in the larger context, I think I have a solution to how we can resolve the bitter dispute between those folks that want to expand Castillejo and those who are opposed to that. And I've been thinking a lot about it. I've actually been in contact with a public relations person by the name of Lorraine Brown out at
Mr.
Castillejo.
James, please pause the clock.
Yeah, and I'm about finished here.
Okay. On the bike pathways project before us tonight, please.
I understand what you're saying. So you want to let me finish?
Yes, I
Or
would
you
like
want to go you want to cut me off a second time? What's your choice?
I'd like you to take your remaining time, as much of it as you want, to talk about the agenda item.
Well, that's what I'm doing. It's not always a narrow path, and I've been doing this for a lot of years.
All right, start the clock again, please.
Okay, I've been doing this a lot of years, talking to council and commissions, and so I think I understand the process. And some things go, like I said, not in a straight line when we're having conversations about important issues. But Rebecca's raised a critical issue, and that's regarding the issues around Castillejo. I'll leave it at that, and we'll present more details because I have a solution to Castillejo, and I think it's quite creative. And I hope that we can talk about that in detail. And I'm hopeful that in the future, you'll be more mindful, Mr. Chair, regarding the First Amendment rights of citizens to talk on these kind of critical issues and not necessarily always directly to the point that you want to hear. And I thought it was really tacky, by the way, for you then to use Rebecca Tanner to ultimately cut me off. And that, I'll leave it at that tonight. I think she had a conflict in doing that because I've been so critical with her on her safe parking program. Thank you.
Are there additional public comments?
No, we don't have any hands raised. That concludes public comments for this item.
Thank you. So we will move now to commission questions and discussion. And the first hand I see up is Commissioner Templeton.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited about this project and the idea of getting the grant funding. So I will start by saying, I don't know if I have shared this with staff or not. My kids go to school across town. So we live in one part of town and we drive down Meadow and over across Ross to get to school. And when we were biking in the spring, a couple of years ago, my child was hit by a car on biking on Meadow right in front of the elementary school. And she was okay. She was thrown off her bike, scared, but okay. But I learned what a dangerous place that is and how much we desperately need improvements to bike safety corridors along Meadow. Also, when I worked over in the Shoreline Park, I biked from my home in South Palo Alto in Barron Park down Meadow and across Fabian, and I have interacted on these spaces as well as a bike commuter myself. And I think it's a great place to prioritize bike improvements. I think there's a lot that can be done there that will not just benefit our students, but also people that live in Palo Alto and might work nearby. So I think it's a great idea. I wonder, enhanced bicyclist safety and visibility. do we have more details on that, or do we not need them at this point? Are you mainly focused on looking for who to outreach with, or like any more details that you can sneak in there for us? No, not yet.
At this point, we're just really looking for feedback on the community engagement plan.
Yeah.
What we want to do next, and as I mentioned before, PTC is going to be involved in every phase of this. So after phase one, what we plan to do is bring a concept plan back for PTC to look at. So I think that, at this point, what we're going to do is try and make sure that we're reaching out to everybody that wants to be provide feedback so that we can develop what that concept is going to look like. And then, yeah, so that's really what we're hoping to get tonight. And thank you for the kind words about this project. Just so you know, the staff that you have here with you tonight and also listening are actually the staff that wrote this grant back in 2017. So in my former role, Sylvia was in her former role, and Rosie Mesterhazy, who is also listening, worked on the grant. So
that's kind of awesome.
This grant originally, so
that's great.
Yeah, we take that to heart.
Well, I would add then the only thing I can think of is you have business owners, but you might want to talk to some employees who use those pathways as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all I want to say for now. Let me come back from later. Thank you.
Check. You're muted.
Oh gosh. Sorry. Okay, first question. Would you mind pulling up the slides real quick? I'm not sure who's managing them. If we could go back to the timeline real quick. That said something about inform, participate. I don't know. Yeah, perfect. What is the date at which, or let me ask this question. Which stage do you have to reach for you not to lose the money? And by what date?
So I'll answer your question kind of backwards as Sylvia tries to figure out how exactly it ties into this, because this is really the community engagement process. But noting that what we need to do in order to meet the obligation for our grant is we need to have something into Caltrans, which is called the E76, which is their authorization to proceed to have the funding obligated. That's by January of 2023.
Okay.
So, that ties into where we're at stage 5.
Right. So look, I'll just suggest this. Number one, I'm concerned that things always take too long in the city of Palo Alto. And so I think you should, I'm sure you have worked this into your sort of schedule, but I wondered to myself if you were planning on having the design be finalized in the last 6-month stretch before the funding had to be, not lost. Would that potentially put us in a position where we're perceived as cutting corners on involving people enough, right? And then in order to meet the needs. And I'll just tell you that I hate that moment when they're like, you're rushing this. And we're like, well, we have a financial incentive. Okay, and then I want to, can you switch the slide about tools? Yeah. This is not the thinking of someone who's been on a planning commission for 9+ years speaking like I'm too tired to participate in the public process. And that's not where this is coming from. But I would suggest to you that there's so much for what I would consider a rather simple goal, right? The simple goal here is to create a safer bike route in multiple places. I just think that we don't need, I don't think we need standing meetings. I don't think we need to have interviews with key partners. I don't think we need city communication channels. I don't think we need I mean, it's just, there is, I think, a population in the city that wants all of this squared. And then there's 40,000 people in the city that are like, what is taking so long? And they don't, presume to be experts in any of the design. And so my message to this staff would be, get a competent, designer of bike protection plans or whatever, bike, whatever it is. And then let's just invest in a workup, whatever you want to call it, a design one, and then just have an online survey. And that's it. And people can write, the usual suspects can write hours of information. And I will commit as a commissioner, I only have 1 year left, but I will commit on behalf of all the commissioners that the commissioners will read every piece of information. It makes absolutely no sense for there to be small meetings that the city puts on for the public to come and stand around big posters that purport to display version 1 and then version 2 and version 3, and everybody's trying to feel it out, and there are people who've never been on a bike before who have really strong opinions about it. I just think that we got to go 21st century on this, right? We're at the heart, we're in Silicon Valley. Have a good website with really clear indications. And if there's a concern that individuals in the public don't have access to the web, or they can't possibly get access to a computer, create a workstation in the city hall that allows them to do it. And then offer people the opportunity, 6 months, 4 months, 3 months, plenty of 90 days, 120-day span of time to respond with comments, and then have responsive design 2, version 2. I just think that the presentation to neighborhoods, like we're treating a bike boulevard like it's, it can't be this way. It can't be. This is the sort of effort. I know these are just draft recommended outreach. I know you're asking us which one of these we like. I'm not saying you're suggesting we use all of these, but these are the tools that we would use for a Cubberley project that involved 1,500 housing units for all the teachers and staff in the city, plus 400,000 square feet of community usage space. That's what that page looks like to me. For Bike Boulevard, you know what? You could send me a card in the mail with a little picture, and if I have an opinion, I'll share it. And let's get this done, because it's like, I've said this before and it's been a long time, but every street in Palo Alto will be better if it had a bike lane. We don't need any meetings for the general public to share that view. The question is it going to infringe on parking space? Okay. And those you were talking about Fabian Way. Fabian Way looks like an expressway. It looks like Foothill Expressway. And if you're there for any part of the day that's not 8 a.m. and maybe 5 p.m., there aren't that many cars on it. And so it's like, if you're like a kid and you want to cross the street, you're like, I got to get to the corner, because if I cross anywhere else, it's too big, right? So the idea that you suggested, maybe reducing a lane of traffic there to accommodate protected bike lanes. Yeah. You want to reach out to the businesses there and get their buy-in. That makes sense. But I really don't think, that we should assume that we need to use. It's like we have 3 minutes that we make available for every speaker. Not every speaker needs to use all 3 minutes. Some people can finish it in 30 seconds. We have 3 years to figure this out. We don't need to use all 3 years to do it, just because we have that time. And so what I would suggest to you is, and my commissioners, I'm sure, will feel different. I saw 3 hands go up the minute I started saying what I was saying. So I'm sure there's some disagreement here with what I'm saying. But if we do feel very strongly about getting a lot of input, can we still run it? Can we still treat it like it's a sprint instead of a marathon? Can we try to demonstrate to the city of Palo Alto that we can effectively create a bike boulevard in less than the 24 months that we have to do it? And then can we go back one page? Did we omit any groups? No, sorry. You could stay right there for a second, because it's relatively similar. Or no, sorry. One forward. You jumped 2. So I would be like very specific. If, for example, this comes back to the Planning Commission, in plan development form. Like if this comes to us one more time before you begin the process, I would suggest to you that like we should be very narrow, right? If you're going to talk about Fabian Way, then it's just the businesses that front Fabian Way. We do not need to hear from what's that market that's down on Middlefield and Meadow or whatever it is. It's Kid Corner from Fabian. You know, like we really should be precise and I think if you want to reach the parents if you want to reach families, go through the school, maybe just contact the PTAs and say, listen, can you distribute this survey? I guess what I'm trying to say is be really thrifty and err on the side of less. Can you go back to the slide with the schedule? Yeah, err on the side of less involvement. I think we're very confident in our new city council. We're very confident, the city should be very confident in its new city council. The city, I think, should be confident in its staff. Like, let's do concept plan development. Maybe that is inform, and then feedback is involved. And then that's, cut one of these out or one and a half of them out. There's, before this year, the notion of doing anything digitally was loath to the sort of, and I don't want to say this in a negative way, but to the staff of the city, right? Like I remember Adrian Fine as a commissioner suggesting, is there any way we can invite people to participate from their homes in our commission meetings? And it was like, no, you work for next door. We know what you're doing. Conflict of interest. No, I mean, it was crazy. And now we're totally online. And so we're doing it. And so what I would suggest to you is let's utilize that. Let's go with it. Let's keep the meetings short. Let people engage with staff individually instead of in front of 200 people, as if it matters how many people hear your comment, as opposed to whether or not the staff themselves actually read it. And so I've spoken a lot. Was defending my idea because I felt like I saw the opposition. So good luck. That's all I'm going to say on this topic. I can't wait to see this project move forward, and I hope it happens, before 2023.
Thank you. Commissioner Lowing, you're next.
Yeah, thanks. Obviously, this batting order is quite odd, that it's coming to us after it's already been approved by City Council. So I don't know if that was intentional or it just happened on the schedule or whatever, but it kind of obviates one of our objectives, in fact, our main assignment of making recommendations to council. And they don't have to take our advice. And in this case, they didn't have the benefit of that, which I don't think is terrible. But here we are making recommendations after they debated it 48 hours ago with all 7 council members and passed it 7-0. So if you're just wanting our feedback as well, I think that's fine.
Yeah, if I can, a couple different things. Yes, number one, we are wanting your feedback as well. So I think, first of all, we really appreciate your feedback. Second, it's going to be back to you 3 times more before it goes back to council. Right. So you're going to have plenty of opportunity. In particular, we want you to provide us with the feedback to give to council moving forward. So that's why it's coming back to PTC 3 times before it gets back to council again.
Right, and in that regard, I think maybe it could even have skipped this time. So maybe what happened is okay, because they got through it pretty promptly and very thoroughly, and approved it. So my comments will be more concise than the previous speaker. I think that it's very consistent with the comp plan. I think bike safety is one of the top priorities we should have in this town, and this does it in multiple areas. I think the breadth, as has been commented on, is broad and arguably too broad when you get to the level of running newspaper ads. I think that gets a little bit far relative to what we have to accomplish. So that would be the kind of area that I would suggest was a little bit less effective, and you might look at trimming those areas in the interest of time. So look forward to how it comes back to us, but don't need to belabor sort of the deed that's already done. Thank you.
Commissioner Suma, you are next, but before you speak, I want to apologize. I'm still getting my footing here as the chair, and I realize when I see your hand up that I had intended to give you an opportunity at the very front of this item for a discussion of the issue you raised early in the meeting. Why are we talking about this tonight? So I'm sorry I overlooked that.
Oh, thank you so much. No worries. I just felt, as Commissioner Lowing mentioned, there was no real reason for us to review this at this preliminary stage, since both recommendations in the staff report that staff recommended, council voted on 2 days ago. But so that's irrelevant at this point, and so we're hearing it, and thank you for remembering, but no big deal. I also think there's not much to say tonight, because what we need to do is to work with the options that are brought back to us, and thank you for staff for acknowledging that you're going to come back to us 3 times during the process with options, so that we can help the community work towards the best options for these bicycle boulevards, which is very important, I think. And I think that the community does have a lot of opinions about these. So that's all I'll say. And thank you very much, Chair.
Can I just make a comment? Just want to clarify. These are not bicycle boulevards. These
I know. Oops,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I just, a couple commissioners have been calling them that. Yeah, these are bike lanes. It's 2 bike lanes. It's bike lanes on 2 streets and a bike path.
I'm sorry that I made that mistake.
That's okay.
Thank you for correcting me.
Commissioner Templeton.
Thank you. Yes, I think you can just see how eager and supportive we are if we're aggrandizing these projects. We're looking ahead to what else can we do. Anyway, so just to address a couple of comments from the commissioners and to clarify for my own information, are we required to announce these kinds of projects in the newspaper? Is that part? I feel like some kinds of city activities are required to be announced in the paper. Is this one of them?
Yes, we would probably need to, I believe, and I'm looking to our legal here, but we would probably need to announce it before construction, pre-construction, I believe. But I don't think, oh, there we go. I see Albert. I don't know that we would have a legal requirement to do so beforehand.
Okay, well, that makes sense. And I can see why you would include newspaper ads. I don't think it's for purposes of a campaign in favor of this, but more for information require different outlets. That makes sense. So thank you for that. And then a couple of other things. I was wondering, just looking back over your list of people, why are we specifying Mitchell Park field users and not Mitchell Park users? So, yeah.
So we want all Mitchell Park users, but I think in coming up with that list, I wanted to make sure that we were able to think about the leagues that use those fields for recreation, to ensure that those folks, could get their voices in for, I think there are a lot of, to your point earlier in the earlier item where you were talking about having to schlep kids around after school, a project like this could actually free up parents, for after school schlepping.
Yes, there's no better word. You're absolutely right. And I was thinking about that for the next line item when you talk about community center users. My kids were dancers, so I was always taking them over to the different dance programs that are at the Coverly Community Center, near, one step over. And so I would think about, I don't know if you mean only Mitchell Park Community Center users, or if Coverly's near enough that you'd want to talk, but to bike to Coverly, you use all these same paths. And the other use case I was thinking about for Mitchell Park is, yes, I think it's really important to think about the athletes who have to bring their gear with, and that would include people that use the field or people that are doing arts types activities at the Coverly. But also we have the park, Magical Bridge Park, that is kind of near all of these routes. And, you know, there are some users of that park, some visitors there who wouldn't necessarily be biking themselves, but we might have people driving bikes that have different specifications, right? Bringing their child with them, or someone with a larger bike that needs to bring a larger child to a park like that for the diversity needs. So I think that's also interesting just to think about, you know, are there other ways that those bikes paths are being used? But I know you will reach out to those, and those communities will certainly speak up. Just want to acknowledge them here in this discussion and make sure that we all say together, yes, we hope to get all those feedback. And then I just disagree with my fellow commissioner, Commissioner Alchek, about not reaching out to employees at sites that might appear distant. For example, like Shoreline, there's several large employers there, and many of their employees may use these paths. They are all, obviously, many of them very digital, so you might be able to solicit feedback there at low to no cost, and be able to get some insights, you know, just over email or something from the employees there. And then the last thing I wanted to ask is, I noticed that bike underpass is highlighted in red on your map, so it's not the cyan. That little stretch, has that already been recently improved? I think it has, right? Is that why we're not including it in this project?
Can you pull up that map, Sylvia? I believe you're talking about the Adobe
Slide
Reach
6.
Trail, I believe. So the Adobe Reach Trail is part of the Bike Bridge project. So that connects to the 101 bridge, and that's the red that you're seeing. So that path is going to connect to the 101 bridge, bike bridge that goes over the 101 that's currently under construction.
Right.
That path there along the Adobe Reach Trail will connect there into Meadow.
So that stretch is already covered in another project, and that's why it doesn't.
Yeah, it's currently under construction right now. So
Okay.
this really connects that and connects thus to the other side of the 101 as well.
Makes it even more urgent. I love it. Okay. Well, I guess I just want to wrap up my comments by saying how much I appreciate the effort you're putting into outreach and communication. I think back to a few years ago when, you know, we didn't have this attention on outreach, and it led to some frustrations on the Rosswood projects, and some part of this where Ross meets Meadow may also be part of this project at some point. So, you know, it does appear to me that you guys have, as a department, really embraced that feedback and adopted those lessons learned, and I'm really excited to see that. So thank you.
All right, thank you. So I guess I'll start. I've got a question and a suggestion. So the question really it sort of tacks on to Commissioner Alchek's asking about sort of the breadth of the community engagement and all the tools. I know this is not our transportation department's first bikeway rodeo. And so I was imagining that you have sort of designed this process based on your prior experiences, which I'm not aware of. I mean, I know where the bike facilities are around town, but I don't know the process you went through to get them approved and in place. So I'm curious, and I think the commission would benefit hearing a little bit about your thought process as you designed what does appear to be a pretty elaborate community engagement program.
Right. Well, I'll take a first stab at this, and then Sylvia might want to jump in, because I'll just tell you that although I was with the city previously when it had worked on the Ross Roads and the original neighborhood traffic safety and bike boulevards project, I did not work on that project. I was working on primarily parking and the shuttle and safe routes to school and a few other things. So I'll just mention that I joined in, a little over a year ago, and we're still cleaning up things from, really lessons learned from really what I would say was a community outreach process that we've learned a lot of lessons from. And that's what's indicated in this really, really robust outreach plan that staff has developed. And I want to acknowledge we have staff on the line here that worked on this plan, but everything that you see in this plan comes out of the fact that we, as transportation, heard that the outreach on the prior project was not adequate. And so that's really what this plan seeks to do. And it really seeks to set a model for this type of project, for this level of project, the type of outreach that we believe is necessary when you're talking about something like potentially removing parking in front of somebody's house when they're used to parking there, or removing a travel lane when somebody says, I need that travel lane because that's how that's the lane that I drive to work. If you take away that travel lane, what happens? Is Fabian Way going to be trafficked? It's all those different kind of difficult decisions and discussions that need to occur. And we can't have this plan go out there and be in construction and have somebody say, I did not know about this. What is going on in front of my house? And that's what we heard had happened, frankly, with some of the prior projects. And so that's what this plan set out to make sure that did not happen. And I hear every one of Commissioner Alczyk's comments that we might have gone too far on this, but I hope that's what we hear at the end, is that we went too far. We talked to too many people, but I think we'll see, because I still believe that this is going to be something where it's going to be a project that some people are going to really strongly support and some people are going to really strongly oppose.
Starlack, did you want to add anything before I continue?
Just thank you. Just a little bit. I think if you look at the tools, we really tried to emphasize the digital. Just to refer to Commissioner Alczyk's comments, we really did try to think about much more digital than we otherwise would. So and we were cognizant about our limited budget for this work. So that all worked together to create the plan. Thanks.
So when I think about your community engagement being rolled out, what I think about is from my perspective, the stakeholder group that is potentially most impacted by this project are the people who live along these three roads, or live or work, I should say. So they are either the homeowners or the tenants, and the businesses, owners and employees. And so to me, it's critical to have your outreach successfully connect with that group, because those are the ones who are going to have to live with it on a daily basis. And so the only thing I noticed in looking at your kind of detailed rollout of which tools you would intend to use during which phases is that you had door hangers as a tool to use in phase 5. And to me, door hangers are sort of a very effective way to get my attention. And I know that most of the tree trimming services in the peninsula must agree, because they love those. And I always look at them, before I recycle them. But so I was wondering about moving that door hanger concept up to phase 1 for the buildings along the routes. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you.
All right. And so that's really all I had to say about it, other than it's exciting. And I love the linkage, and I love how this fills in this corner of Palo Alto and creates that connectivity. I have been missing that underpass that's been closed while they build the new Adobe overpass, and I ride by it at least twice a week, and I love seeing the progress. And so I'm really looking forward to crossing over the freeway on that and eventually connecting to all these new bike paths. We've got a couple more commissioner hands up, and I will start with Commissioner Suma.
Thank you. So I just want to say that I think it is really important how we plan this part of Palo Alto, because we're planning for a lot of new housing in this part of Palo Alto, and it will be housing with families and children. So I think it's really important to get this right. And I appreciate that staff has been very comprehensive in their ideas about how to address the community. And I say none of those ideas are so daunting that they have to hold staff back from coming up with solutions and options that they bring to council and hopefully PTC for specifics along these project routes. And I think it's really good to get the word out early. And I think one of the ways it can be done is to post signage along the routes, because I think it's really easy to know who lives there and who works there along these routes, but it may not be as clear who are the users of these routes on a daily basis, whether they're children going to school or adults. So I think anything you can do to expedite and get early information from users of the route will make this a more successful project. And yeah, so that's it. Thank you very much.
Check.
I just want to ask a few questions. I mean, I did not watch the 60 Minutes episode about the Ross Road controversy. So I don't know the learnings that apparently you guys have walked away with. But I guess my first question is, were you suggesting that there were individuals who abutted those changes that had never been properly informed? They didn't receive a notice?
So I can't say that that's the case, but I can say that that's what we've heard. So to this day, we still hear, from people that has, said,
I guess the right question would be, did the city mail all the people that abut that route like an information packet?
I would say I believe so. But
okay. I guess I would say this. Look, I hear this all the time in my professional work. I mailed it in and it didn't arrive. Okay. So I would agree with, first of all, I mean, the notion that like Chair Heckman's suggestion that you put a door hanger is somehow saves this project from what would have otherwise been like a disaster, right? So I completely agree with him. This idea of getting their attention early, and I would suggest to you that the best use of your money would be to do a door hanger. And then, I don't know if you get this from Amazon, where they take a picture of each door package. Take the picture. I'm not even kidding. Because when someone says it never was left. In fact, do it twice. You should do one door hanger and a month later, a second door hanger, and they should both be photographed. That will be the best use of your money. And I would suggest that it is the worst thing that you can do is suggest that you're going to begin the conceptualization of a bike lane, because that doesn't tell someone what they're about to lose. And I'm not suggesting you make the case for them Here's why you should hate this project. You're going to lose your street parking. No, I'm not suggesting that either. But it's to invite people into a process 3 years before it happens with a concept that you're going to improve bike safety on their road. That is the sort of thing that many people might be, all right, whatever. And then they don't pay attention. And then you put that second door hanger on the 3 weeks before you start construction. And they're like, wait, what's that pole you just put up that said no parking? That's not going to work either. Which is why I would suggest, and you know, that when you said it's not a bike boulevard, which made me feel like I wasn't paying attention. And then it made me laugh because I was thinking, yeah, it's not a bike boulevard. It's a bike lane. We're talking about a bike lane, and it's going to take over like this in department for the next 3 years because we got stung on the last one, I'm guessing. And so I guess what I'm trying to suggest to you is I really think that if you came up with your first design and then you door hanged that, this is what it will look like. And these are the implications. We invite your comments. So it's not some conceptual invitation to participate in the process because most people in the city don't have the time to go to a presentation about how to improve bike safety on their street. They will make the time to go and participate in a process if they think a change is going to impact their lives in a way that they're not excited about. And so, like I said, I'm not suggesting you make the case for them to be against it, but it's too early to invite every neighbor of this bike lane to be weary because you haven't even come up with anything yet. And so it's a door tag that will likely get recycled without much thought. So I would suggest to you is you draw it up best you can. This is a draft idea. This is one conceptualization of it. Here are the impacts of this type of conceptualization. Do you have any suggestions or concerns? Participate in the process. And then once you come up with version 2, you put that up in a door tag again. And then you don't need to reach out again until you do construction, assuming you've really notified people of the process. That would be my suggestion to you. I absolutely sympathize. If there is an individual out there who doesn't find out that they're losing some parking space in front of their house until the construction starts, that's terrible. And if there are credible, accounts of that happening with the Ross Road, then that's inexcusable. And for sure, the department probably deserved the thrashing that it got. And we don't want to do that again. So let's make sure we don't. Amazon has it. They had enough times they had to send the same package twice. They figured that one out quick. Let's do that. This is where I hire the same guys. And then maybe they can deliver our packets. Okay, that's it. I'm done with that. I really, really, really wish you guys success here. I really do. And I want to suggest to you that everything we do as a commission, as this department has been particularly, I've been on this commission almost 9 years, a little over 9 years maybe, and I've seen so many different transportation heads, and it's like the toughest job. It's got to be the toughest job. I can't even imagine. And what I would suggest to you guys is, I'm sure, and maybe Assistant Director Tanner, or even Director Lade, and even City Manager Shiketa probably has an opinion about this, which is that, if you set up the process for a bike lane that is too over scrutinized, then how will we deal with parking, paid parking? How will we? What is the expectation that a bike lane to get a bike lane takes 2.5 years? Paid parking should take approximately 14.5. That's the rationale, right? So I guess I'm a little concerned that that we set expectations right, but I also want to be responsive. I think that Commissioner Templeton and Commissioner Suma, you guys have and Commissioner Heckman, you guys all triggered me and it made me think about that idea. And so let's be smart about it. Let's give them something that they can actually appreciate the impacts of, not an invitation to participate in a 3-year process. I shouldn't say that. A significant but unknown number of people will just recycle that flyer. And that will be, you'll have the same result. They'll come back and be like, what are you talking about? You gave me a flyer about bike safety. You didn't tell me I was losing my parking spot. So I agree with that. I would double down on that. And I wish you success.
Thank you.
Right. I don't see any other commission hands up. So I'll ask staff on this item. Did you get what you came for?
Yeah, thank you very much. And look forward to seeing you all again after phase 1 of this project. Well, I'm sure I'll see you before then, but see you. Oh, sorry, see you specifically on this item again after phase 1. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
So I'm going to move us now into commissioner questions, comments, announcements, or future agenda items. Ms. Tanner, do you have anything here?
I can speak to the future agenda items. At our next meeting, we will be having, it's listed here in your packet as a study session, but we'll actually be making it an action item regarding ADU code changes. I believe I mentioned before that the City Council did adopt the recommended changes that the PTC looked at last spring. I think it was around April or so that we had the item. They did ask the PTC to take a look at some additional items that were raised by a group of local architects and to see if the PTC wanted to recommend any further changes to the ordinance. So we will make that an action item so you can either provide direction to keep the status quo or to have us come back with certain items adjusted. We will have 855 El Camino Real, which is the town and country village, which will be looking at doing a zoning text amendment to allow medical office use in a portion of their facility. And then the 181 Addison, I do need to confer with staff that may have to be moved out. I think we got some late items from the applicant. We will at least have the 2 items, which are pretty meaty. And so I think we'll be well occupied. And then we have a couple topics coming up in future agenda items that are listed as well. And those will be coming forward, I believe, as scheduled. And we actually have more items than that. So we have quite a full first quarter of the year for the PTC. I'm available for any questions if there are any, or back to you, Chair. Commissioner Lowing.
I just wanted to repeat my commercial message from earlier. NEUs is one of those really tough things down to the details. We got to have more than 36 hours with that packet. So please, let's hopefully what's there is already there. So you'll be able to get it out a little bit earlier than usual. Thank you.
Suma, your hand is up. Do you want it to be?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I also wanted to bring something up, which is that the new BCC, board commissions and committees regulations it's sort of unclear if they're in play right now or if they're not. And I would appreciate staff comments on this, because I think where it is it was voted on, and it's not an ordinance, so it doesn't need a second reading, but it was voted on by council last year. And it's not very clear to me how these new rules affect our body and when they start affecting our body. And I think it's important for us to know, really honestly. And if it's not going to be into effect until, which a member of the clerk's office told me, until there is a sort of tweaking or clarification of some of the language. So I would just like clarification on that.
Yeah, it's a great question, one that we're working on actually. So we have plans to come on our first meeting in March, which I think is March 10th, to have a discussion about the handbook, which we're hoping, one, will get some more clarity on some of the items. But my understanding is that the intent of council was to have it begun to be implemented, which would mean for us to fully implement would be to change some of our bylaws and other, documents that we have regarding our procedures, which I think we would want to do in order to make sure the public knows that these are the procedures. And especially for some of our bodies, there's code language even that we need to update for, especially like the ARB and other bodies. So there's a bit of work. I don't know, Mr. Yang, if you know from the city attorney's office, I don't know if you're assigned to this project, when we might be seeing the item come forward, because it is a bit of, there's a lot of moving parts that need to get updated for it to all be in place.
Yeah, I don't know specifically when that's expected, but my understanding is the same. I think is what Commissioner Suma heard from the clerk's office, which is that there are some kind of tweaks and kinks in that document that still need to be worked out, and so it's going through an additional vetting process right now. And then I think there's a plan to have training for both staff liaisons and commission members when we get to a final product that's going into effect.
So may I ask, Albert, I'm sorry, it's not in effect now?
That's my understanding. I don't think that there's really like a technical answer to whether it should be or it isn't. It's just that it's something that I think staff, when they looked at it, realized it needed a little bit of work before it was fully implemented.
But I will give you one example, Commissioner Suma. For example, there's the need to develop a work plan for different commissions. And so we want to work on that with you and with the chair and vice chair developing that, particularly when we both, one, can understand the council's priorities that they're going to set at their retreat this week. We'll soon have some new commissioners with us. And so those are some items that we do want to start working on, even if the handbook hasn't been memorialized through the code updates.
I mean, how actually can we work on it before the handbook is legal? I mean, I feel I'm not
a bit awkward
for or against anything. I'm just asking for clarification.
Yeah, it is a bit awkward. And that's, like I said, one of the things that we're looking into as we're preparing to kind of bring it before you all for discussion, just even of what it is. But I know when it did, when it was adopted by the council, I think the intent of especially the subcommittee, which was then Councilmember now Mayor Du Bois and Councilmember Cormack, was that we would begin implementing it. And so I think we do need to your point, get clarity on is it mostly fine and we can start implementing it? And or again, will there be some changes that may happen where we wouldn't want to start implementing something and then it changes further?
But may I ask another question? It's not an ordinance. It doesn't need a second reading. So when does a vote by the council that's not an ordinance, when is it in effect? I
think that my understanding is that some elements of our city's codes and ordinances do need to be updated in order for elements of the handbook to be in effect. So for example, some boards and commissions have code related kind of mandates how they should operate that are in opposition to what's in the handbook. And so that would need to get changed, or else that body would be acting outside of the code. So that's, I think, part of the cleanup, and I don't want to say cleanup, but the adjusting that would need to happen. And then others are not as restricted. And so that's, I think, probably some of the work that the attorneys are working through.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to overstep my boundaries, but it seems like something that needs to be cleared up. I mean, I don't understand how we're all acting legally in the absence of understanding how this legislative act by council affects us. So it's just a worry for me and a concern, and I think for the public a little. Not that the public cares so much about the nuance, maybe, or knows about it, but that we're all operating on the same page. You know what I mean? So I think it's very important this gets cleared up kind of soon. I don't know if my colleagues agree with me, but it's kind of a weird gray area, I think. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you. We'll keep looking into that.
Commissioner Templeton.
Thank you. Since I'm following right after Commissioner Suma's comment, I will say that I'm satisfied if you guys just bring us an update. I'm curious to know when the old process stops and the new begins, but I feel pretty comfortable that you guys will tell us. So good. I'm glad that you brought that up, Commissioner Suma. I wanted to let you guys know that you all know that the XCAP had its almost last meeting today. They did not finish. I had to jump over here. They were still going, but we think that that'll go one more time, and we are doing some final edits on the report that will be the outcome of that process. So if you are interested in following along, we should have a final draft ready in the next few weeks. So we'll have approved it next week, hopefully, and then it'll go through an editing round. So if you're all holding on until the last document is ready, it's almost time. So speaking of documents, the staff forwarded our letter to City Council, so no changes were presented or suggested. Then finally, congratulations, Chair Heckman, on your first full meeting as chair. I think things went very smoothly. So thank you.
Sorry, I just got disconnected from the internet for a minute.
Right when I was complimenting you. Oh, so sorry. I said great job on your first full night as chair.
Well, thank you. I was going to have to read the minutes. Okay, so I just have very briefly one item. So we have been meeting this way for nearly a year now, since last March, by Zoom. And so I think it's appropriate to have kind of a check-in, because I think we're going to be meeting this way for a while longer. And so at our next meeting, February 10th, when we get to the commissioner questions and comments, I would be interested in some comments on how's it going. Are there little tweaks that we could make to how we do this to make it a better experience for the public or staff or the commissioners? So it may be a short discussion, I don't know. But I'd like everybody to give that a little bit of thought before we reconvene. With that, I do want to thank our presenters tonight and our staff, and particularly wanted to tell Ms. Klicheva that she did an outstanding job as our host. She was well tutored by Mr. Nguyen, and I know we'll be in capable hands whenever it is that Mr. Nguyen does take that vacation. So I want to applaud that effort, and thank all the commissioners for being ready to go and contributing to the meeting tonight. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.